I've already thought the 150 one would have.
Yeah.
Or they just don't really. All right, good morning. I'd like to call the December 16th City Council meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bush.
Here.
Soldner.
Here.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Here.
Dave Line.
Here.
Prowett.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and this morning's prayer will be given by Gary Getting with Hutchinson Friends Church. Thank you.
Yes, shall we pray? Our Father in heaven, we are indeed incredibly grateful for this community in which we live. Appreciate those who serve us here in these chambers and in various places around our community as well. Thank you for those that care about what's happening in our community as represented by the body that's gathered here today. And above all, we thank you for this season of the year in which we celebrate your coming to this earth to redeem us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4A, Fall 2014 Bravo Awards.
You're up.
Good morning. Is this on? Jana McCarran, Director of Planning and Development. And it's my pleasure to announce to you the Fall 2014 Bravo Award winners. Just a little bit of history about the Bravos. The city's actually been doing Bravos for 18 years, and we do them in the fall and the spring. We try to get awards from throughout the city, the different districts. The Community Improvement Commission is the commission that accepts the nominations and actually selects the recipients. They're given to properties that meet one or all of the following criteria: a striking appearance in the neighborhood, long-term maintenance and investment, and or recent substantial improvements. And on behalf of the Commission and City Council, I want to personally congratulate all of this year's awardees and thank them for making our community an attractive and inviting place. So when I call your name, if you're a Bravo recipient, if you would come up, we'll hand you the award, and thank you again. So the first Bravo Award recipients are John and Denise Moore at 201 East 19th Avenue. Are John and Denise here today? Okay. Hutchinson Community College. Is anyone from Hutchinson Community College here today? This is 1 East 9th Avenue, the Peel Center.
Thank you.
On behalf of Hutchinson Community College, thank you to the city. This project would not have been possible without the generous donation and gift of many of our donors, especially the Bob and Lou Peel family. So, thank you again.
Christopher and Margaret Akins at 111 East 18th Avenue. Are the Akins here today? Can I have a full house? 312 East Avenue B, Palmero Investments. No. Shirley and Jack McClellan, 1020 East 12th Avenue. Kimberly and Mark Hopengardner at 1809 North Main Street.
No thanks.
1326 East Avenue A. This is Interfaith Housing. They've done a facelift on their building. Ron Fisher.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Okay.
you want some handshaking? Oh,
Whoa.
I do want to say something. When I came to Hutchinson about 4.5 years ago and began helping interfaith housing, one of the questions that was on the board was, would we stay on Avenue A? That question has been answered, and we are staying, and we are seeking to invest in that community. We are extremely appreciative of many, many hours of volunteers that have gone into making that building a little more beautiful, and we're not done yet. So thank you very much.
.215 and 219 West 5th Avenue, Santa Fe Townhomes, the townhomes at Santa Fe Place. New Beginnings. Is Shara here today? I don't think that they're here. But I want to, again, thank everyone for keeping up their properties and really investing in our community.
Thank you. That was a really nice list of homes and businesses. Okay, and then the 2014 Painting for a Better Future Award.
Good morning
That's you
again.
too? Okay.
That's why I didn't go back to my seat. Again, I'm Jana McCarran, Director of Planning and Development, and I'm here to announce before you the 2014 Painting a Better Future Award winner. The award was developed by the Community Improvements Commission in order to recognize volunteer groups for their contributions to the Brush Up Hutch Paint program. Since its inception in 2011, the Brush Up Hutch Paint program has been responsible for painting 59 houses, and about half of those have been painted by volunteer groups. To date, the city has dispersed $13,900 in paint reimbursements through the Brush Up Hutch Paint program, and it's made possible largely through the efforts of volunteer groups. To that end, we would like to award the 2014 Painting a Better Future Award to the United Way of Reno County. Here to accept the award on behalf of Reno County United Way are Tona Turner, the Executive Director, and Lisa Gleason, Director of Community Impact and Engagement. This year, the United Way painted at least 3 houses during their United Way workday. So if Lisa and Tona, is Tona here? I don't know if she's out in the lobby. Tona? Oh, there she is. Well, thank you very much. We have a nice award here.
All right, thanks for being our photo op.
Just want to read the award here. It says, presented to the United Way of Reno County by the Hutchinson City Council and the Community Improvement Commission for exemplary volunteer service from November 2013 to November 2014.
So I get to share with you, we'd actually painted 4 houses this year. And one of the houses, we get the city kind of gave us a listing of a few houses to consider. And I was driving around those houses to see if they'd be a good fit for us. And I am driving by this one house and I see this elderly lady way up on an extension ladder. And I stop and realize this is one of the houses that the city had suggested. So I get out and I walk up to this lady and approach her as she's up on the ladder, and I said her name, and she looked down at me hesitantly and said that yes, that was her. And I said, I could hear her talking to herself as I walked up, and I said to her, could you come down for a minute? I'd like to talk to you about painting your house. And she said, are you my angel? And I said, no, I'm pretty sure I'm not, but why don't you come down and let's talk? And she said, well, I don't know if you heard me or not, but I was up there praying because I'm really nervous about being on a ladder and I don't want to paint. And I was praying for help. And I said, well, I represent United Way, and I'm here to talk to you about possibly bringing some volunteers to come paint your house. And I will tell you that this woman was in tears, and it was not me, but the volunteers who were her angels and came and painted her house on our community work day, and she much needed that assistance. So this is truly what it's about, coming together as a community to help each other. So United Way is very honored to receive this, but really we're receiving this on behalf of our volunteers who are truly trying to make this a great community to live and work and play and come together for the common good. So.
I don't don't think I have anything to add to that necessarily, because that's exactly what my sentiments too, is we are thrilled and grateful to receive this award. But it is on behalf of the caring power of this community that comes together. We just get the privilege of getting to facilitate those processes and bringing and convening people to come together. But we do appreciate all the volunteers that participate and help get this work done for people that need it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, that was a great story. All right, next item, please.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
All right, and this is a time where we will take comments or communication from the audience members on any issues that are not on the agenda. We ask that you come to the podium and please state your name and address. Do we have anyone, and please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to address the council? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the next item?
Item 6A, public hearing on Commerce Gardens bond resolution and ad valorem property tax abatement.
All right, we need to open a public hearing, please.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing on a Commerce Gardens bond resolution.
Second.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Yes.
Dave Line.
I will need to abstain as I'm on the board of directors of the Commerce Gardens organization.
Pruitt.
Yes. And I think Frank's gonna talk to us. Educate us.
Good morning. Frank Edwards, Director of Finance for the city. As part of the public hearing, so you are aware, there are representatives of this project in the audience that may be able to answer any questions you have that I'm unable to. Just a little background. During the November 4th meeting, planned by Investment Resources Corporation to redevelop this property was proposed. The plan included demolition of 78 units and reconstruction of 72 units, apartment units, and also basically a renovation of 24 existing one-bedroom units. That results in 96 new units at this site. The plan also includes issuing up to $10 million in industrial revenue bonds, and the developer is requesting an agreement for payment in lieu of taxes as part of this resolution. IRC is, the payment in lieu of taxes, or I'll call it pilot for short, is for $38,400 a year. And agreeing to this plan is basically a 13% over the 2014 property taxes in an effort to stabilize the tax liability of the project. The agreement, again, is for 10 years, and it would commence the year following the year that the bonds are issued. Also attached is a resolution the issuer is requesting for the authorization and the issuance of the IRBs of not to exceed $10 million. The property is located in a neighborhood revitalization zone and is eligible for a property tax rebate. An analysis between this property tax rebate versus the pilot program concluded that there was a minimal difference between the two for the 10-year period. With the IRBs that are being proposed, the city becomes the leaseholder of the property and Investment Resources Corporation will be the lessee. The city is not responsible for any expenses related to the property and debt service payments, as they are the sole responsibility of the lessee. Upon conclusion of the public hearing, the council must consider the attached resolution and agreement for payment in lieu of taxes, and our staff would recommend approving the resolution and agreement. Those are my comments.
Do you have any questions for Frank?
It's a really exciting project that'll allow our community to keep those low-income units, correct?
Yeah, yes.
So I know we've
a
heard a
large
lot about
project.
it.
If we have no further questions, do we want to close the public meeting?
Do we want to hear
See
from
if
the
there's-
developers or no?
Just if there's anybody in the audience that would want to comment on this during the public hearing, now would be the appropriate time.
Not seeing anybody?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Yes.
Dave Line.
Abstain.
Pruitt.
Yes.
I would move to approve the resolution determining the advisability of approving an ad valorem property tax abatement for property finance with the proceeds of taxable industrial revenue bonds and agreement for payment in lieu of taxes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And again, do we have anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this issue? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Abstain?
Prowett.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 6B, consider fiscal year 2014 budget amendments.
And again, we need to open a public hearing.
I will move to open the public hearing on the fiscal year budget amendments.
Second?
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Prowett.
Yes.
Okay, again, Frank Edwards, Director of Finance. Today before you, we have 4 budget amendments to the 2014 budget. The first being convention and tourism. This is basically a pass-through item where we collect taxes from the local hotels. 4% goes to the Reno County Convention and Tourism Bureau. 3%, which was previously passed to HPA Associates, but it's now being held by the city. The amounts passed to these entities are considered an expense, and due to the higher room utilization during the year, partially because of the continuing repairs on the roofs on the hailstorm damage, we are experiencing more expense, actually more revenue, which we pass through as expense. So the budget needs to be amended from its current level up to $720,000 for 2014. The second one is special parks and recreation. It's basically Salt City Splash. The revenue there was not adequate to the budget levels. We had projected that we would subsidize Salt City Splash $181,314. Because of the lower attendance than expected, the need is $215,000, or a $33,000 difference. So this budget needs to be amended. Third is debt service, which is bond and interest. We have refunded bonds during the year that we were not planning to. We did that in an effort to save interest expense. And because of this, when we pay off those bonds, that's considered an expense. So that has caused that budget to be over what we had projected. We are amending the budget and proposing to amend the budget to $6.5 million to prevent budget violations. And lastly is the Hutchinson Airport. And this is during middle of the year in 2014, the airport was required by the FAA to engage in a wildlife remediation program. And the city contracted with the USDA for a 12-month period beginning in June for $68,000. We've incurred about half of that unplanned expense this year, causing that budget to be higher than what we originally proposed. We're requesting to amend that budget from $401,986 to $450,000. And I will entertain any questions you have.
Frank, on the convention and tourism, do we always just pass through the percentage? Do we ever have a cap amount?
No, it's a straight 100% pass through.
Okay.
With the exception of the 3% that we're now started retaining. And we've
That's
For the
and that's
convention
3%
center.
on the convention center
on the
project.
convention center project, yes.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Frank, which of these are new expenses against our budget? Are any of them?
Yes, well, these are all different funds than the general fund, but
Right.
the Parks and Recreation Commission is a higher expense than we expected.
Okay.
The
And that's,
debt-
and that's based due to what?
Lower attendance and revenue that
Okay.
didn't cover all the expenses, and therefore the city subsidizes.
So are you looking in the future to amend that budget to move that up for future years?
For 2015, the budget's set, but 16, we will need to address that, yes, if attendance continues
yeah.
to decline.
Okay. All right.
Kind of interesting on the pool deal. I get some information provided, I think, by the rec, but, you know, back when the pool was built, I think the first year of operation, you know, there was like 90,000 attendees, the next year 80, next year 80, then it was 63,000, and this year it was, or 2014, it was 32,000. So there's been pretty substantial drop off, and a lot of that's due to a lot of other pools, a lot of other communities built similar type facilities, so.
I think additionally, you're seeing a shorter season as some of the
Right.
colleges open up earlier in mid-August, whereas before we were open until after Labor Day. Now we're closed before then.
Well, there's also been some talk about needing to do some upgrades. Diving boards, the toys out there in the pool that they play with, as well as lockers and things like that.
Yeah, the pool's I mean, it's in any community, it's a significant maintenance issue long-term, and typically a subsidized operation in most communities. It's just not unlike some of the other things we do, heavily subsidized.
Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to comment on these issues? Hearing none, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I would move to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Sorry. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Daveline.
Yes.
Pruitt.
Yes.
I would move to approve the fiscal year 2014 budget amendments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Daveline.
Yes.
Pruitt.
Yes. Next item, please.
Items 7A through G, consent agenda.
I will move to approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Daveline.
Yes.
Pruitt.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8A, consider resolution setting a public hearing to consider the creation of a redevelopment district and approval of redevelopment plan for Hutchinson Mall property.
Mayor and council, the proposed resolution before you today is really a follow-up to our December 9th study session that we held in the discussion with the new owners of the mall, Hutchinson Mall. As you're aware, we talked about Rock Capital announced the purchase of the Hutchinson Mall back on September 11th. Mr. Andy Weiner, the president of Rockstep Capital, has met with city staff and others in the community over numerous times over the period from 2013, latter part of 2012, 2013, and into 2014, really as part of his due diligence in the purchase process. And as you recall him discussing, the purchase of this mall was extremely difficult and complicated due to the financial situation of the mall and the current ownership at that time. At that study session last week, the redevelopment group talked with you about generally the project in general, what we're looking at, a redevelopment plan, and then a proposed public-private partnership. The development team, as a part of that, requested that the city look at creating a redevelopment district and approve a redevelopment plan. And really what this involves is a creation of a tax increment financing district, or what we know as TIF. And the TIF financing proposal that was presented would involve both property tax and sales tax. And essentially, we talked briefly about that, and we'll have much more time as this process goes on to get into details. But basically what the TIF does is freezes the tax liability in time as of today. Then the incremental increases in property tax or sales tax would then be reinvested, or be captured and reinvested back into the property. And, you know, the simple example is if the tax liability for the property today is $100, and 3 years from now it's $200, then the additional $100 incremental increase would be recaptured by the redevelopment team for improvements to the property. No taxing entities would lose any of the revenue that we're currently getting today. So today, the council is really just being asked to set a public hearing for January 20th of 2015 to determine the advisability of moving forward on creating this redevelopment district. And so between now and then, we'll be setting up meetings with the various taxing entities just to talk with them about this process and what impact it might have on their organizations. And so at this time, we would stand for questions. We do have a representative, Mark Abbott, that's representing the mall redevelopment group that's in the audience today, should you have any questions. But with that, would stand for questions, but would recommend approval of the resolution that really sets the public hearing for January 20th, 2015.
John, since we're talking about the redevelopment district, take a moment and describe the district boundaries, if you would, please.
Yeah, and I think the audience doesn't have it in your packet. There's basically you take the ring road of the mall, and that's the redevelopment district we're talking about. So excluding, and it's a little bit excluding the Hobby Lobby and Orscheln's, yeah. So that would not be a part of this district. So generally, the ring road of the mall proper.
Everything inside the ring road.
Right, inside
So like
the
the ring. Chili's wouldn't be covered, the
No.
little
Correct.
strip mall
IHOP.
down to the south, I mean, all of
None
those,
of
the
that.
IHOP, the Subway, and
Yeah.
all
That
of
is
those businesses would not be part of this.
that is correct.
Would the property to the south there, the vacant property, would that be included?
Mark, I don't have my. Let me get my aerial up here. Somebody hold
Look
that.
On mine, it does not look like it. It appears the entry drives are included, but the properties along there are not.
So if
I
additional.
believe that would be the case.
And the property to the west, please.
I just think it's real important that the business owners currently outside that ring clearly understand that they're not a part of this
Right.
process. And I also think it's important people understand that as the mall increases and grows and brings more people to it, those restaurants would see significant business, and that tax will be captured by the city, as this project comes together and grows over the next 2, 3, 10, 15, 20 years, hopefully. So it is to our
Right.
benefit.
Yeah, according to the, excuse me.
Go ahead.
According to it is the roads as you come in and the inner circle of the mall. So not those out parcels.
Well, I would just say that given that we have a very busy agenda today and we're going to be talking about this in greater detail, I would make a motion that we approve setting the public hearing date on the redevelopment plan for the Hutchinson Mall property.
I will second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or any questions?
Do we need to actually set the date in this, or do we just set that the hearing is going to be
The
set and then-
resolution,
and then
The resolution
distributed to the
says
public?
it does.
yeah, the resolution has the date.
But I don't need that, we don't need that in a motion?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
that was my only question.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Anyone from the audience would like to address this? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyrostic Carvalho,
Yes.
Dayline.
Yes.
Crowett.
Yes.
Item 8B, consider request to rezone 16.97 acres of land on the northeast corner of East 17th Avenue and Apple Lane.
Good morning, Council. I'm Casey Jones, Senior Planner. And at your last council meeting on December the 2nd, we did talk about this case a little bit. It's a request by Jim Strawn to rezone a piece of land that he owns at the northeast corner of Apple Lane and 17th Avenue. It's currently zoned C4, Special Commercial District. And he's requested to zone it I3 Heavy Industrial. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and recommended approval of the request by a unanimous vote. And at the last meeting, Mr. Strawn was unable to be here, so you asked to have it reconsidered today to get some feedback from him and talk a little bit about what he's planning to do with the property. Is there any question you have for me or of the applicant?
Yes. I have some questions for Jim.
Good morning.
Hey, Jim. So when, when we set all this up and discussed it, it wasn't that there was any concerns about, what you've done, what you're planning to do, but the issue that comes up is if we move this to I3, then it's always I3, and you could put any kind of business in there. And of course, given the fact that the decisions that we're making are long-term, and the fact that you could win the lottery tomorrow, move to Hawaii, sell the property to somebody from California
like the way you
who
think.
really care less about a very prime piece of property on a major gateway to our community. So having said that, those were our concerns. We didn't want to move forward or move it from an I-3 to a lesser one without you being here to talk to us. So that's kind of where we're at.
Well, thank you. Apparently the last time when the packet was sent to me, I never received it in the mail, so I apologize for not being at the last meeting. Typically, anytime I have some sort of action happening with the city, I'll always be here to answer any questions. So I apologize that I wasn't here last time, and thank you for just tabling that and giving me the opportunity to come back and talk about it a little bit. We started looking at this property years ago, and I believe it used to have an industrial zone several years ago. Then John Oswald had purchased the property, and since you know, a lot of times the chamber and different people are able to have sell their land a little bit more affordable than other developers. He decided if he zoned it to a commercial zoning, he would have a better opportunity of getting it sold. So what I'm wanting to do is to take this approximately 17-acre parcel, break it up into smaller pieces to where other people could, we would have more flexibility with the land. What we're wanting to do is put what we call flex space in that area where we'd have, it's like large storage areas for contractors, electrical, mechanical, body shops, possibly window tint people. And then they, in the shop space, they also have a small office there. And so, you know, that's kind of what our thoughts were, at least on the perimeter. And we put a little drawing together here. It kind of shows the 17th and Apple Lane. So we're showing different buildings along the edges. Then on the interior lots, we're showing small, approximately between half-acre and three-quarter-acre tracts that we could sell to, say, lawnmower or lawn care people, contractors, and they could build their own metal building, be able to put their trailers and things at their location, keep it parked outside, not cause any problems. So when I came to the city and asked them what would be the best zoning for me to do this in, I believe that they suggested the zoning. I was just after some sort of a zoning that I wouldn't have to keep coming back and asking for some type of a special use permit and just keep coming back every time I had somebody interested in a parcel of ground. So if you want to lighten it up, my objective is to get folks in there where they can, you know, have outside storage with trailers and, you know, maybe lawn care, maybe contractors, maybe body shops.
Were those type of businesses, and Casey, maybe you're better equipped to answer this, were those type of businesses restricted by special use permit in like an I-1 or an I-2? Is that why the I-3 was recommended, or?
Well, based on the ordinance I have before me, it looks like we have a big category that includes all types of contractors, contractor storage yards, supply yards, hobby shops and trade shops. All of those types of uses are permitted in every industrial district. So the I-1, the I-2, and I-3, they're all considered permitted uses. The same would be true for most warehousing and storage uses. It looks like, however, truck terminals, motor freight terminals, large distribution centers are conditional uses in the lighter industrial zones. But in the heavy industrial, they're permitted by right.
Okay,
help
that's how I
you?
thought I'd read the chart, but I thought maybe I was misunderstanding, so.
So most everything being described would be allowable in a lesser industrial level.
Casey, I note that the property to the south of Jim's 16.97 acres is I-3. That's the Heidi Industrial Park. It looks to me like there's a lot of similarities in terms of the layout of that, in terms of the size of those lots. So it would appear that there would be some consistency, so I can see where the planning commission was coming from in recommending I-3.
I think you're right. I think the planning commission did look at that,
Yeah.
did take that into consideration. The majority of uses in that neighborhood are industrial.
Right.
And everything on the south side of 17th is already zoned I-3. And they also took into consideration the fact that this is a very large property and that there's plenty of room to put in some type of distance or buffer between the residences to the north and any development that would go onto this property.
Jim, what would your plan be if, once this is rezoned, in terms of the interior streets and the infrastructure, what would your intent be to move forward on that?
Well, again, we would, once the zoning's changed, then we can finish formalizing our design plans.
Okay.
I can't tell you when exactly we plan on putting the street in, and when we'll actually start construction in that area. You know, a lot of that depends on the demand. I'm going to say we would probably start within the next three years. Sometimes it takes us a while to get the design work done. And I also recall from the last meeting that you had that I wasn't here at, the folks to the north had some concerns with the water in that area. And we've had some engineers out to do some preliminary studying, and we have set aside a little bit of land back here. If you look to the northeast corner, which is pretty close to the airport and back to those homes, that's actually a reserve area for a detention pond. We're right next to the GVI ditch, so we've had engineers starting to work on this preliminarily for the drainage design, and we think we'll be, you know, we could pretty well guarantee that water won't leave our site.
Jim, one more question. On your drawing on the east side, you have listed proposed storage containers.
Yes.
Are those like individual units that people could rent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. We're not talking pods or?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes, we are talking pods,
Oh,
just to
you
make
are
that
talking
clear. Yes, we
pods.
would be
Oh,
talking.
okay.
I'm going to assume we're looking at container storage in that area because there's a
Okay.
fair amount of storage out there, but we're looking for more of an industrial type storage where
Okay.
people could bring things in and they're large, secure,
Okay,
and they could move them in and out.
okay. They
Yeah.
would be movable.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it appears it wouldn't have a lot of visibility from
No, it wouldn't.
anywhere.
It would be
runway or
backed
anything.
up.
From
Now,
17th,
I
uh-huh.
can't say as that won't come closer towards 17th. I can't say that there won't be
Yeah.
self-storage in that area. But this gives us the flexibility. We think we'll be putting flex space in, storage office combined,
Okay.
with removable walls so that they can actually enlarge. So it's could be something similar to an incubator type of an area where we could start a company small and then they could remove a wall, enlarge their storage area, and then eventually they could get to where they could build a building on one of these sites and grow their business from there.
Okay.
Casey, what are the screening requirements on I-3 versus going down to a lower level?
It really would be the same. The screening requirement comes into play whenever you have a residential district adjacent to an industrial or commercial district. So, and the screening really amounts to a solid privacy fence, 6 feet high, plus landscaping, whether that be an evergreen screen or a row of deciduous trees. Could also be an undisturbed area, I think 20 feet wide, a wooded area. So
But there wouldn't be any screening requirements on the property that faces the 17th Avenue, since it's actually facing another I-3 district. Is that correct?
That's correct.
See, that's one of the concerns that comes in, Jim, just to jump through this, is that, you know, since since 17th is a major gateway into our downtown area, into the mall, you know, are we going to have tractor trailers out there being worked on? I guess that's a question. Are we going to have those screened so that they, you know, that's a huge property to screen. That's a huge cost. I don't know that makes sense either, but what are your thoughts on that?
Are you talking to Casey or me?
I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, the guy that's going to pay
Just
for all
wanted
of
to
this.
clarify that.
Well, you're the guy that's going to pay for all this, and then Casey's going to sign off on it.
I can't tell you that if something were to happen to me, that couldn't come about.
Right.
You know, you can never say never. So I guess putting our best foot forward, we have some designs of some buildings that we've looked at. I think I have, let me see if I brought that with me. I could show you, I could pass this down if you want to take a quick peek at it. I
That's
didn't bring
okay.
multiple
Just
copies.
describe it.
But it just shows the front of the building along 17th Street would be that flex area that our objective is to have that for the different types of contractors, offices, lawn care types of people, with an overhead door in an office. You know, our objective is not to bring big trucks in here and have hoods up and be working on them and have a truck terminal. We just don't think that this is that spot.
Okay.
But what we do want to do is just not have to keep coming back for a special use permit or some kind of, you know, zone change or things that. So I can just never tell you never, but I do understand that it is a gateway coming into the community.
Yeah.
And,
in
but
the
you
past-
also have industrial to the south, so they're coming, driving by the same zoning as what we're putting in. The screening, I know that the screening to the folks, because we are concerned about the protection of the people to the north, there is a drainage canal that goes through that area, and we would design that into our drainage plan so that that would stay. So there would be a fair amount of space to the north of this property that would be kept fairly vacant make sure that we have good drainage.
Right.
Yeah. I hope I answered your questions okay.
Well, I mean, just the concern has always been protecting our gateways, because in the past we haven't done as good a job of that as we should. And so, I mean, I understand that the property to the south is I-3, but we can't, control that.
Understand.
But we do have the opportunity now to impact this piece of property. And my goal is to try to do that in a way that protects the community, but also doesn't, put an undue financial hardship on you and your plans. But I mean, so the buildings facing the street would be like public parking, the facing of them.
Correct.
And then in the back would be potentially your tools area, parts.
Well, yeah,
If you're
I
talking
mean,
about- if you're
along
talking about lawn
17th,
care,
our objective is to not have any outside storage. That's more along what those containers are doing out there, so that any of the outside storage would possibly be able to go into the containers. Now, the metal building, or the area where we have the lots parceled off, that's where we could see more outside storage, but we wouldn't really see that along 17th Street. Our objective is to have, you'll see overhead doors, office doors with signs, and a brick facade.
Okay,
Now, in the back, it would probably be metal, but the front would be brick.
all right.
But we can always
Well,
ask you to plant
would the
some trees.
covenants protect, Casey, would the covenants protect some of the concerns that Bob has in as far as the enforcement, landscaping, setbacks?
Yeah, well, I would point out that this property is in our Gateway Corridor Overlay District.
Right.
It's a special area that's been designated to be reviewed more closely whenever a development proposal comes before the city. So our site plan review committee will take a very close look at any development that goes into this corridor. And there are higher landscaping standards than what you would see in some other areas of town. But the minimum landscaping requirement in an industrial zone is basically to have street trees lining the frontage.
Okay.
In the past, we've allowed applicants to cluster their landscaping in different areas of the lot if that would make more sense for them, but the standard is to have a certain number of trees based on your linear street frontage. So along 17th Avenue as well as Apple Lane, some type of street trees would be normally required there. We'd expect to see that on a site plan. But if there are any covenants, those are something that the city's
I
not
know,
going to
yeah,
enforce.
that's
but-
difficult to enforce, I understand, yeah, right.
Well, there are several other steps in this
Steps in the
whole
process.
process. The plating would have to be approved, the landscaping would have to, so there's a lot of protection built in, I think, to the process.
So Casey, given all the discussion today, is the city still recommending we consider I-3, or are you looking at potentially a smaller or a lesser rating?
Well, we would just simply recommend to you what the planning commission recommended, which was I3. If you're not comfortable with doing that and you'd like to consider a lesser change, that's something that you could do. And I think I misspoke at our last meeting. In fact, I checked our ordinance this morning, and it says that if you want to do that, if you want to consider I1 or I2, that you would have to send that back to the planning commission, have them take a look at it, and then recommend back to you once more.
I might mention, I asked the city what they want, what they felt like they wanted
Yeah.
zoned. I mean, I didn't,
Yeah.
I come to them and asked them what
Right.
direction
Yeah.
they would like us to take this before we started, so whatever you decide.
Well, Jim, this is what happens when you get a bunch of lay people on city council. And, you know, we try to figure out the best we can.
I don't
What
mean
it's
to.
going to look like in 20 years. Because when I'm driving down Apple Lane 20 years from now, I'm going to be a part of that decision, and I just want to make sure it's the best one I can make right now.
Yeah.
But having said that, I would make a motion that we support the Planning Commission's recommendation of moving this property to an I3.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to address this issue? And Jim, we're counting on you not leaving for Hawaii in the next month or two.
Don't worry.
All right.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Pruitt.
Yes.
Thank you and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank
You
you.
Thanks,
too.
Jim.
Next item, please.
Item 9A, consider sports arena master plan project.
Mayor and council, I'll start this conversation off. As you're aware, there's been some informal discussions concerning improvements to the sports arena dating back to 2013. And the conversation really started from a meeting that occurred in the March of 2013 during the NJCAA tournament with between then Mayor Bob Bush, myself, meeting with Executive Director of the NJCAA and her staff. And annually, wasn't uncommon, annually we sit down with the NJCAA folks just to talk about any concerns or needs that we may need to address prior to the next tournament. But during this particular meeting in 2013, the NJCAA folks asked the city about our future plans for major capital improvements to the sports arena. And at the time, and still today, we really have no plans for any major capital improvements to the sports arena other than to continue our maintenance effort, partnership with us and the college, and I think we've done a really good job of that over the years, maintaining that facility. But the NJCAA folks shared with us during that meeting some of the challenges that they see with the sports arena during the annual basketball tournament, and their desire really to try to improve the overall tournament experience for fans and for players, for the media, and team officials. And so from that meeting began a series of meetings and conversations between the NJCAA and city staff. And towards the end of 2013, then the council directed the city manager to put together a committee of citizens, really more of a steering committee, to kind of help us work through this conversation about needs and potential improvements to the arena in the future. And the idea was to develop a master plan that addressed the needs of not only the NJCAA, which is a very important point, you'll hear that later today, but also the needs of the community college, the needs of the city, and the needs of the community at large, and how we can make this facility more well-rounded. So in January 2014, the city, in partnership with HCC, hired the firm of Schaefer Johnson Cox Fry out of Wichita, who teamed up with Sink Combs, an architectural firm out of Denver, to help the committee develop a master plan and begin addressing the needs that have been brought forth by the various user groups. And that's really just a brief history. There's a lot more detail to how we got to where we are today. And, but generally, hopefully that gives people watching today and in the room today kind of an idea how we got to where we are. And we do have a little more detail in the council packet of this history that would be available to anybody if they would like to request that. So again, the committee was established early this year. We've met 6, maybe 7 times over the past 6 months. And I'd like to mention those that are serving on the committee at this time. I'm just going to introduce them. And if they're in the room, there's a few of them that couldn't be here today. If I'd have them just stand so you all can be recognized. And I'll start with Michelle Abernathy, John Daveline. John, you don't have to stand. Bob Fee. Please stand. Yeah. Dan Nacarado, Jerry Ricksecker, Leanne Cox, Steve Drock, Richard Gray, Daryl Pankratz, and Ron Sellers. I think he's here. So, and you know, we've been fortunate staff to work with this committee, and they've worked very hard in the very short time we've had, and been really, really focused on this project and development of this master plan. And there is a letter in your packet from the committee that I think does a really nice job of explaining the committee's mindset as it relates to this project. My report is more just the facts, and so I think it's important for you to hear some of their thoughts. And again, they're in attendance today, and they'll be allowed to make any comments they want or address any questions you might have when we complete the formal presentation. But our plan today is to have our architectural team share with you a summary of the work that was developed by the committee. They're going to talk to you about the process used in developing this plan, some of the building challenges that we're faced with today, and basically just a review of the master plan development. And so I'm going to introduce Shannon Bohm, who represents Schaefer Johnson Cox Fry, and she'll start the conversation there and introduce the balance of the architectural team.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. Joining me today is Gary Haller with Schaefer Johnson Cox Fry, and Chris Kostelic, and he is with St. Combs Death Lefts. When we began this process, certainly the impetus was probably the tournament and their request, but we did not focus solely on that. Our goal was to look at the sports arena and how that could benefit the city, the college, and also the community at large. So that was our mindset when we began this process. We really used a two-part process. We looked at and studied with, I guess, our background and our architects and engineering. We looked at the existing building and the condition that it's in. So we analyzed the HVAC, which is your heating, ventilation, and usually air conditioning. This one, it's probably more lack of air conditioning because it's not air conditioned. And then electrical systems, and looked at structural analysis, see if there was any major cracking or issues that we saw with the system. Looked at life safety, building codes, ADA. So that was really the parts and pieces of the existing building analysis. Along with that, then we wanted to look at how can this building be used, or how is it used, and how could it be used. And when we did this, we started out working with a group of stakeholders. And I'll get to the next slide. So you can see we met with a series of groups, about an hour or so each, although we had conversations throughout our study. And really when we talked with them, we asked them how are they utilizing the existing facility and what challenges are they facing, and then what could they foresee that would help them utilize the facility better, and what are some additional events that would help them or serve the community. So we had good conversation, and we were able to develop a program and needs from that information. We did develop a space needs matrix, and I know this is hard to read, but the idea, and I think what this chart shows you, is that there's not one group that only uses one part of your arena. Although the college, which is the left column, certainly uses it heavily, all of the different groups utilize different spaces within the arena, and so I think that's important to note too. So Chris is going to come up and actually go through some of the plans and our needs assessment, and then we'll be available for further questions.
Well, good morning, Council and the Hutchinson community. We're very excited to present some ideas to you. Again, my name is Chris Kostelek. I'm with St. Combs Deathlefs Architects in Denver, Colorado. And our firm specializes in arena renovations all over the country. And so we really looked at this project sort of through the eyes of experts, but recognize that every building's different and every community's different. And so I think that's really what we learned very quickly, was that the existing arena has a lot of challenges. You know, it's got a lot of opportunity. It's a great venue and has been so for 62 years for this community. And so we want to recognize the importance of that. But we really felt like looking at this from the perspective of the next 50 years, we really want to understand how we could fix the deficiencies and as well as improve the conditions. And so I know Shannon kind of went through some of the study that we did and then analysis, and that really looked at kind of the existing conditions, bringing it up to modern code standards, life safety standards, but more importantly, say, what does a modern state-of-the-art arena need to include, particularly one that hosts a national tournament, as well as support the needs of a large community and a growing college. And so that's really the way we looked at this project, was how can we make it better, not just fix it and prevent further deterioration. So first thing we talk about is the spectator experience. When you buy a ticket and join an event and sit in a seat, what is your experience in this facility? Are there adequate restrooms? Are there, circulation issues? Do you feel like you can't essentially participate in the event the way you would in another arena? And I think that was really one of the questions that the NJCAA had was, should we be looking elsewhere for a better venue? And I think our question is, well, what would that mean? And so we looked at a lot of the things in the existing building, in particular some of the creature comforts, heating and cooling and good seating and sight lines and concessions and restrooms. Code deficiencies, these are just things we can't get around. If you touch an old building, we have to bring it up to current codes. Things like restroom counts, fire sprinklers, life safety, fire alarm systems, exiting for code required occupancies. We have almost 6,400 seats in this arena. It's a lot of people to bring into a single venue, and it has to be safe. So we want to make sure we consider that. We also have to consider folks with disabilities. And again, in a modern arena, that doesn't just mean getting in the door. It means having adequate seating options, well-distributed seating options, access to all the amenities that any other spectator would have. That includes restrooms, concessions, and everything else. And so we wanted to make sure we understood that as well. And a great part of this building is really non-compliant with current American with Disability Act standards. And so we wanted to point out those issues and make sure we came up with good solutions. We also have to remember that this is a sports venue, and athletes have to compete here as well, and their experience is just as important. And so we wanted to look at things like locker rooms and weight room facilities and the practice auxiliary gym that is sort of non-regulation and way too small, and as well as not being accessible for people with disabilities. Locker rooms with headroom issues and lack of appropriate restroom and shower facilities and other things. And these were also things that the tournament pointed out. And so we looked pretty carefully at, again, what would a modern day athlete expect out of an arena that's 62 years old and what they would expect out of an arena today. And finally, we can't forget the people who have to run these buildings and have to take away a door and a window to load in the front of a building, or lack of storage, a lack of ability to service this building, both from a physical standpoint as well as a technology standpoint. Things like press areas and wireless controls and all the other things that come with essentially managing this type of building and broadcasting and other things that happen here. And so we considered all the areas in that regard. And then finally, we looked at the site. We felt like that was another place to really understand how this building works. We were there during the tournament to watch it sort of at its peak functioning. And it functions very well from a parking standpoint. You can bring a lot of people to this site. One of our real challenges is that we don't necessarily bring them there safely. We're driving people through both of the front doors through drop-off zones while pedestrians are trying to cross those zones. We got trapped on one of the islands as well during that event. And so we wanted to look at the site and say, are there ways that we can improve that experience as well? Because again, if you design arenas, you remember that the experience doesn't start when you're in the building, it starts before you get there, when you're on your way to the event. So we did look at some site improvements as part of this master plan. And I want to step back and sort of point out that this is a master plan. That was really what we were charged with creating. It wasn't how can we fix small pieces. We were charged with looking at this as a holistic approach, and so that was really the logical progression, was to understand how this overall complex functions. So one of the things we really thought about on the site was, again, this new visibility, this new front door on 11th, because that really is the sort of the frontage of the arena. And how could we mitigate some of these circulation issues without great expense and sort of prevent some of those conflicts between pedestrian and vehicular traffic? So we felt like creating a new front plaza, front door, front drop-off area, and then redirecting traffic to the parking lots, allowing free pedestrian access to the east-west entries, would really solve a lot of those problems. It would create a much better visual, a much safer environment, and frankly, a much more appropriate event environment. So that was one of the things we considered. Not to mention bus drop-off. There's lots of buses parked out there, and that's what happens when we bring tournaments, is they bring players on buses. And we want to remember that it's not just bringing spectators, it's bringing service, loading, buses, teams, all those things. So we looked at this building and said, all right, well, what can we do? It's an old building. It's sort of in that war-era Quonset hut design. It's masonry. It's a concrete frame. The first thing we realized very quickly is it's not a building that's very easy to renovate and manipulate. It's a concrete building. And so our looks at the internal workings of the building recognize that the event works pretty well in the Arena Bowl, but all the surrounding support areas would be very difficult to expand or grow given sort of the current constraints. The ramps on the corners are cast in concrete. All the locker rooms are either in concrete frame or masonry. So we very quickly looked at the building as more of an expansion to augment some of the existing functions, to give them some of those needs that were expressed in those community outreach meetings, and do this in, I guess, a more cost-effective way. The one thing we'd hate to do is spend more money renovating than we would have spent to build new, and that was really our initial challenge. So we looked at the building and said it really zones out pretty simply from a functional standpoint from north to south. You really see athletic functions and player functions more to the north, and these more community-oriented spectator and event functions toward the south from this new entry from 11th Avenue. So to the north addition, we took some of our cues from the community and stakeholder feedback to add a new 2-court practice gymnasium. This is sort of a workhorse to a building like this. This is great for all the sports that happen in the building, as well as a lot of community events. And this space could function for a number of those, and I'll show you some images in a second. We also felt like, again, improving that loading, staging, storage, a need on this portion of the building made a lot more sense to load and stage from the north. We also felt like some of those athlete support areas that are existing could be expanded. The weight room's pretty unsafe. You have a lot of equipment right on top of each other, and when you're lifting hundreds of pounds, you don't want to be doing that within inches of the next person. And so we felt like an expanded strength training would support this new athletic function. Then the red would be new home team locker areas. Let's see if I can use a mouse here. That'll actually work really well. Am I seeing that on the screen? Yeah. All right, that's not working very well. The red would be new home team lockers, which would allow us then to take the existing home team and visiting team lockers and convert those entirely to visitor areas and general purpose locker rooms. That was another request of the tournament, as well as the need when we expand this building to have more locker room facilities. And so really that's what the North Addition allows us to do, is to create practice facility, community use recreational and sports facility, some purpose of fitness and strength training, and then locker rooms. And so as we start looking at this project as a benefit to the Hutchinson community, as a benefit to the community college, as a benefit to the NJCAA, we really wanted to look at it through the perspective of all these different potential uses. And so if we were to build that larger gymnasium space, we see that as having a lot of opportunity for a wide variety of activities and functions. Depending on the floor surfaces and materials we choose, and depending on how we design that space in the end, we really see a lot of potential in that for a lot of different uses. Not to mention just the uses, but also the ability, to, again, to bring larger capacity events and uses, camps and clinics and tournaments and other things that would be purposed in the competition gym now could be purposed in this new auxiliary practice facility. As well as, again, supporting the needs of the college. And again, I think that's really who's using the building now, 65 days out of the year. That's who's in there using it, among other uses. And so looking at their ability to recruit and retain students, looking at that practice facility as a potential for their basketball and volleyball programs, training, support for student athletes. So in the South Edition, I won't take too much of your time, I know you have a full agenda, but the South Edition, again, really focused on those spectator needs. There's an extreme lack of restroom facilities. We need almost double those, if not a little bit more, to satisfy the needs of the more than 6,000 spectators. So this would include essentially a new lobby addition, a substantial amount of restrooms, new concessions, ticketing, and all the functions that now sort of happen in a very congested area on the east and west would now happen in this major south lobby. And I think would be a much more comfortable environment. On the upper level of this space, now remember this would be a multi-level space to the south, we would now be accessing the second and third floors so that we could serve the office spaces. We thought if you did move that weight room to a new space, that could recapture some of that existing space for administrative offices. I know when the tournament is running, the NJCAA as well as the American Legion need space, and they're sharing offices or trading offices, and so that would allow us to do that, as well as develop some hospitality and meeting room spaces to, again, serve some of those community needs and multi-purpose events. And then finally, on the upper level, again, we would have additional concessions and restrooms. The majority of our seating bowl is in that upper service area, and so we want to make sure we serve those spectators as well so that they don't have to now travel down the ramps to the first floor to get their amenities, as well as improve the ADA seating. Right now, there's no seating in the upper bowl. It's only at the court side, and so we do need to find ways to get ADA seating locations in the upper portion of that bowl. So that would happen as part of that addition as well. So again, just understanding that this improvement really allows us not only to expand opportunity for community-wide events and large special purpose uses, but bring those spectators and visitors into the building in a little bit more exciting and a little bit more comfortable manner. Wider concourses, better services, better restrooms. It's amazing how people will rate a facility based on the quality of its restrooms and number. And then just the wide variety of functions that could happen in that arena venue. Oops. One of the things we really focus on in our arena venues is the quality of the seating, not just the quantity. Do we have good sight lines? Do we have access for not only those with disabilities, but their companions and families? And I think that's something that this bowl offers as a challenge. And that'll be one of the biggest issues is understanding how to make that work in a much better way. And it might mean a seating replacement. We've included costs in some of those figures for replacement of all or a portion of the seating to a higher quality seating option, and so we're showing some different variables to that. And finally, when you come to this building, you should know where you're at. You should know you're here. And right now, I think the venue has a great feel. We call it this sort of the Hoosier feel. It's a tight-in arena, steep seating. You feel like you're at the Hutchinson Arena when you're there. It's a good venue. We need to brand it a little bit better and make sure that as people come to this arena, they leave with the impression that they've come to a great place, and I think that will help build that next 50 to 60 years of support. So I'm sure the most important question is, well, that's all great, but what does it all cost? One of the challenges we came up with is there's an existing building that has a lot of work that needs done, and a lot of this is sort of non-negotiable sort of prerequisite to bringing it up to code. And so that's about $7,295,000 to essentially go in and do fire sprinklers and new air conditioning and heating and ventilation and code required improvements. And so that's a pretty good chunk of that overall project budget. The South Spectator Edition is about $8.9 million, and that's, again, that entire 3-story lobby space that serves all the spectator needs of the existing building. The North Edition Athletic Project, which is a considerable area, the gym, the fitness areas, additional lockers, and service and loading zones is about $11.8 million. And again, all of those site improvements that improve the circulation, the safety, and the visual of this site is a little over $1 million, almost $1.1 million, for a total project right around $29 million. And that is a substantial investment, and we understand that. And so we really wanted to make sure we painted a clear picture if the Hutchins community is sort of primed to consider this project. You would eventually then have roughly 169,000 square feet of area. That's a considerable size arena. In today's dollars, to recreate that building, and we have data across the Midwestern region to support it, would be roughly $52 to $60 million to recreate this building in its entirety as a new building. So I think if you think about it from a cost-benefit analysis, we feel like this is a good approach to a master plan for the next 60 years of the Hutchinson Arena. So I'd love to open it up to any questions you might have. I know I covered a lot of information, and in your booklet there's a lot more, so be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I had a few questions about funding. I don't know if
That would definitely not be me.
Chris
Okay.
has got that all figured out. That's part of the deal.
Well, this is incredible. I
Yeah,
mean, the community committee has done a fantastic job, but yeah, there's going to be some funding questions, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Are there any questions that might be a little more in his scope? It's really kind of fascinating. It's interesting to think of what it could become, what it maybe needs to become if it's going to continue to have an existence and a purpose.
I guess the question I have, and this is going to come up throughout the financial piece as well, but what about what about phasing this in over time? What about doing, one or two of these parts of this three-part process? I mean, are these all so interwoven that they can't be separated? Or could you actually do, the South Spectator Edition, the North Athletic, and the existing facility, or in some different order? How would that, how is that possible?
Well, you definitely keyed in on the physicality of what we intended from the outset of the project, which is, we don't necessarily want to approach this as an all or nothing deal. That doesn't serve anybody's purpose. I would actually maybe let one of the committee members or Mr. Deerdorf respond to what their expectations are from the committee's recommendation. But to answer the physical question, yes, those 3 or 4 phases are somewhat mutually independent. Obviously, if some vacate other space, renovating it would be part of that potentially. But you see that they are, and I could go back to the plans, but they are somewhat independent phases.
Yeah, why don't you put the plans up?
Yeah,
Just kind of show those different
You bet.
Right.
You bet.
zones or phases or whatever
Yeah.
we're calling them.
Yeah.
Additions.
That's
I
probably
guess.
the best diagram to look at. So, for instance, if you were to build that that South Spectator Zone, that would then allow you to start repurposing some of the areas within. It would allow you to sort of respond to a lot of the NJCAA's comments about this building as sort of a modern spectator venue.
No, the south.
The
The
south,
South,
right, the
excuse
south
me,
part,
the South
okay.
Edition, yes.
Which would include that drive for drop-off.
The drive, the
Yep.
drop-off, the ADA,
site,
the media
And the
rooms, the
increased
meeting
restrooms,
rooms,
concessions,
that.
yes, all that.
Concessions.
You wouldn't have responded then in that phase, for instance, to the need for a practice basketball zone or potential increase of locker facilities, but you would have done a great way in improving the basic code requirements and sort of the basic needs for most of the spectators in the building. So that would be a great phase. The north phase then starts responding to some of those comments about space for athletes, space for practice, the community needs. If we're going to invest in this project, it should do more than just serve an event that comes here 5 days a year. So this allows us to do a lot of things in that space. And so sort of each of these phases you can see sort of has a different purpose, but isn't necessarily dependent on the other to be incorporated or functional.
And then the renovation piece, the $7 million, that's basically heating, air.
I would have to go on a limb and say that piece probably would happen in conjunction with one of those other 2 phases, meaning you really can't go in and do this level of improvement of a building and sort of skirt around the code requirements. And so you'd have to do it all or a portion of that particular renovation phase.
So you're saying you could do like the South Spectator and the renovation piece, which is 15 million, probably kind of as a parcel.
Yeah, you could.
And saving the more expensive piece, the 13 million North Athletic Edition, for a second one.
That's correct.
But it limits the utility for the building as a whole by only doing the south. I mean, when I look at a project this vast, not that I don't really respect the NJCAA and want to make them happy, but this has got to be a much greater vision and serve much more of the community and be used, a much greater time of the year. And if we do only the south side, I'm not sure we add a lot of utility to the building. That's just my opinion.
And I'll speak for the committee, and the members can speak, but that was really a discussion going into this from day one is, can we phase this, and realizing the financial difficulty of this project. And then we started looking at just what Chris talked about, that this part, well, that addresses the NJCAA. The north part, NJCAA doesn't really need extra practice gyms during the tournament. But, you know, the college and the community benefit from the north piece. The NJCAA more benefits, I think, probably from the south piece, plus some of the improvements into the bowl. So it really made it difficult to decide, okay, well, let's do this one, because we've left a lot of needs untouched then by just doing a piece of it.
Well, I mean, this is going to be part of that whole discussion that has no right answer. I guess when I look at the South Spectator piece, and everybody keeps saying the NJCAA, so that's not a driving factor for me. I mean, that beautifies the building. It makes it safe, easier to get in and out of. It addresses a lot of ADA questions. It makes a better experience for anybody going to that facility with the restrooms and with the, you call it amenities, but basically the concession stands. It makes it easier to get in and out of your seats. I mean, it does a whole lot of other things for the total experience for everybody in our community. Everybody that drives by that facility sees a beautiful piece of the building, a beautiful front. I'm going to put that front up, wherever that is. Wherever it is. There it is. That is pretty impressive. Right now, you look at a parking lot in the side of a building. So, you know, so there's, I mean, if we keep saying, well, that's the NJCAA piece, we might as well just kill it right now. Because nobody wants to spend $8 million to make the NJCAA happy for the tournament for 5 days. I agree. But we're talking about making this facility something we can be very proud of while we potentially then phase in, you know, the other parts of it. I mean, if we can sell this thing for $29 million, great, let's do it all at once. I just have some concerns about this community going for a $29 million project. I mean, I just have some real concerns with that. We start talking about, I've already had several business owners comment to me that, you know, they have no interest in a tax increase. They have zero interest in that for a tournament. And then, like they say, well, it's only 5 days a year. It only brings in so many people. And yet my business is going to get hit every time I try to sell something. We have to really look at that. And Jade, I am not saying we don't do the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we got to do what we can pay for. And I don't know if we can pay $29 million. I don't know if we can get $15 million. I don't know. But
I agree that I've heard from a lot of local retailers as well, and that is concerned competitive-wise with gas prices so low, and, you know, and also considering a CID for the mall, we're going to be looking at 9%. We're going to be looking at 9% taxes in the mall if that is approved and this is approved. So, I mean, there are a lot of questions, and I think it's an important conversation for the community to have, so I'm glad that it's going to referendum. John, have you calculated the increase in maintenance costs based on phases or based on, do we have any kind of?
We have not. We've talked about that there will be additional cost for the city and the college based on our partnership in utilities alone. There'll be increased costs from the college in terms of maintaining the facilities and all of that. We'll have to put some numbers that just, we anticipate that would be funded out of our general operating budgets. So I don't know that it's going to be a huge number, but certainly we want to be able to calculate that number. We'll have that at some point in time before this conversation gets too far.
That number's based on the fact that we would go to heating and air, right? The utilities. I mean, because the rest of the building is going to become more efficient as we bring in more modern windows, equipment. You bring in all this new stuff that's supposed to, you know, be rated a lot better than what it is currently. But we are going to have this some expense for heating and air, right?
Right.
And
Correct.
That's kind of what that whole idea is.
And more
about making.
space, just generally. Yeah. So.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask a question about the college's contribution? Or
sure.
I was just wondering, maybe Dr. Files to address this. That $500,000 annual commitment, would that be coming from just your capital outlay budget, or would you be increasing your mill levy to cover that?
We would not increase our mill levy simply to cover that. We have some COPs that are paying off in 2018. We would repurpose that money, and we do have capital outlay money that we collect, that we transfer from the general fund to our capital outlay fund annually that we could utilize for that. So it would, if we do experience a a mill levy increase in the future, it would not be specifically for that.
Okay.
And we would structure the deal in such a way that would just be an operating lease between the city and the college.
Okay.
So it'd come from general fund money.
Thank you.
Carter? So the, so the commitment from the community college, has that gone to your board?
Our board has discussed it, and
Discussed
they are supportive of it.
So
And
they made basically a verbal commitment to the 500,000 for 10 years?
that is correct, and I do have the board chair here if you'd like to address
No,
it.
no. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now the fact that HCC is obviously an incredible partner with the city in this project, talk to me a little bit about why HCC wants us to go forward. Because you don't really care about the NJCAA tournament. So why do you want to be a part of this, and what's the benefit to the college?
Well, I don't want to say we don't care about the NJCAA tournament. Hutchinson Community College wants to be a good citizen with the city of Hutchinson. We see this project not only benefiting the college, and I'd be disingenuous if I stood up here and said it doesn't benefit us, but we see it as a much broader project than just that. It does retain the NJCAA tournament, which has been a staple in Hutchinson Community College for well over 60 years. It's a source of pride and a source of definition in a lot of people's mind of what Hutchinson is. But we think that especially the North End edition opens up the facility to so many more community type activities. Basketball, MAY basketball tournaments that now have to take place at 7 different gyms. We could bring together and concentrate more in this area. Volleyball tournaments, depending, I think the architects talked about, depending upon the makeup of the floor and things, you could bring in soccer leagues, indoor soccer tournaments. And again, I'm not an expert in that area, but really this project does benefit the college, and we certainly understand and know that we would benefit from the project, and that's why we're making the financial commitment that we are making. But we're doing it more so because we believe that it's the right project at the right time for Hutchinson. That arena hasn't been renovated since in the very early 80s, and that was quite honestly just a facelift. It was new seating and some painting. It's been 62 years since that arena's been addressed, and going forward into the future, it's going to be a defining icon in this city. So we're either going to define it as growing, vibrant, or we're going to kind of define it as a status quo.
Carter, if the community prefers a phased-in approach, would that impact the community college's commitment?
We haven't discussed that, Bob.
Okay.
Obviously, there are things that benefit the college more than others, but I have not really discussed a phased-in approach with the board.
Okay.
Well, and I just throw in, I certainly appreciate the magnitude of this number, but my fear would be to phase it in and only do the south end doesn't really bring, I mean, if you have retailers who are concerned about that additional cost onto them, you need that north end to bring those events that might bring more business to town, more retailers, things throughout the year. I'm afraid that south end does play a little bit more towards the tournament, towards a week, as opposed to getting something out there where we can bring in these tournaments and have things going in there all year round. So I'm not sure that it wouldn't financially be smarter to approach it all at once.
Well, and again, I don't disagree with that if we can get the community to sign on for $29 million. My concern is that historically what I've seen with Gowans, that took how many votes before it was approved?
I believe it was 2.
2? Bueller?
I can't speak to that.
What are they on now?
3 or 4.
It was 3 or 4?
But this is Hutchinson.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is Hutchinson, and
Yeah.
they're just happy to spend money. No, I think that's the concern I have. I mean, if there's an all or nothing push, what if you get nothing? Then what happens with Gowans is that you wait 3 or 4 years, you do another push, you scale things back, it's more expensive, right, than what it was 3 years ago or 3 years prior to that vote, and then you're sitting there, and one of the things that hit Gowans was during the construction, the cost of steel went up. And so that made the budget that they had even then not viable. And I know that, I don't know all the specifics, but I know that the college had to really scrape and really work hard to come up with the dollars to finish the project. And even then had to cut back on that project even then. I'm just saying, we need to be really careful about going out there with an all or nothing approach on this. Because if it's nothing, it's gonna be nothing for 5 years until another group sits down to come after this again. I just, I get very concerned about all or nothing.
I wonder if the committee has considered other possible
Thank you, Carter.
solutions for funding, such as sponsorships or
John, why don't you
anything
speak
like
a little
that?
bit to that, if you would? When we discussed the property tax component, i.e.
Right.
similar to Gowan's, and of course, school bond issues versus the sales tax, and how that debt would be serviced over time.
Right, yeah, the committee spent considerable time on the financing side of things, and property tax obviously is one mode. There's not a lot of opportunities out there, and the other was sales tax, and I think it was, we quickly moved off the property tax component and moved towards the sales tax approach. A lot of reasons for that. Some of that is that in a community like Hutchinson, I think a good estimate of 20% of sales tax receipts that we receive come from outside the community, and that relates to tourism activities that we're involved with. So we really kind of focused in on sales tax, and based on the calculations, working with our financial advisors, would be looking potentially at a 0.35% increase in sales tax over roughly a 10-year period that would retire the total project debt, and also provide a little bit of accumulation, what I call a sinking fund, for future maintenance, and that's all calculated in that. And certainly there would be a lot more work we need to do on the financing piece of this if the decision is to move forward. So, but, and again, I'm not want to speak for the committee, but we did discuss in great detail property tax components, sales tax, among other things. So, and sponsorships certainly is a part of that. Came up, and we think there will be some of that. It's difficult to really put a finger on what that could be. The bigger markets, Intrust Arena, those types of things. There are big dollars that come from that. Certainly, we would see some naming rights potentially as dollars, but it's really hard to kind of put a pencil on that. But that would be something we would go after. So,
Speak a minute about the timing of going forward from today.
One of the surprises that I received at one of the meetings is
Yeah.
that we wanted to move forward very quickly, and very quickly would be the April spring election, April 2015. And with that, puts us in motion fairly quickly, and is why we're really here today, although I believe the committee's work was really done up to this point to determine if we're going to move forward. And to meet the April ballot, we've kind of worked it backwards, and the city council would need to, I think probably at the latest date, probably January 20th, I believe we have a council meeting, approve an ordinance that would establish a referendum question and place this on the April ballot. And so really today, what we're looking for is not action or anything like that. The council may want to take some time to think about this, maybe at our first meeting in January, bring this back to determine if you want staff to begin preparation of an ordinance that would formally set up the ballot and referendum question.
Could we ask somebody from the committee, perhaps Bob or Ron or one of you, to go over a little bit for the benefit of the council and the public, kind of the plan of how this will be presented to the voters, because the city has limitations in terms of what we can and cannot do in terms of
Correct.
a referendum, in terms of
Ron Sellers, 3400 Thunderbird Drive.
And I'm Bob Fee from 53 Willowbrook.
But you do pay sales taxes here in Hutchinson.
Yes, I say Willowbrook.
We don't have any stores in Willowbrook.
And certainly some of the other committee members here might be better to address some of your questions. Mr. Bush, I do understand the phase-in approach that you suggested. We're all desiring to keep the tournament. but that is not a huge factor in the committee's suggestion to proceed with this project. What the committee, I think, unanimously felt is that we have a 62-year-old building here that is used on a limited basis and successfully by the college during the fall and early months of the spring, January, February, March. We feel that the community needs a building that can be used for other purposes than the current uses of the facility. And if the whole project isn't completed, those community needs aren't going to be served. And I don't know, I as a committee member don't feel like if we just do the south end and do the things to satisfy the NJCAA, I don't think that that's in my interest. My interest as a community citizen is to provide a better city for our citizens for the future. And those two gyms on the north side, if we can make them usable the entire year, will provide so many more venues than we currently have in the city. You've got to either do the whole thing and make the community proud that we have a visual and usage there, or we just let this building deteriorate. I think it's very, very simple. If you go for $7 or $8 million, you're going to have 10 years from now, you're going to have another 7 or 8. We can't wait for 30 years to make this building as usable as it can be for the citizens of Hutchinson. We know that we have a large selling job to talk to the voters. Jade, you mentioned the mall might be at 9%. Some of that is their own desire going to the CID. That's not a normal tax rate in Hutchinson.
Yeah, and I would say, Bob, I was exactly where you are right now when I started out on this committee. How do we phase this in? Do we really need all that stuff on the north side? Could we buy the Y? Could we do other things? Is there something else we could do? But when you think about the foresight that the folks of Hutchinson had 62 years ago to build that building, and to build it the way they did, and to build it where they did, to not complete the project, I think, would be a disservice to the city of Hutchinson. And only to complete one side creates a whole lot of problems. Let's just say, for example, we do the $15 million and we get rid of the small gym. That creates a heck of a lot of problems maybe the NJCAA hasn't thought about, but I bet you Jerry Ricksecker has, and I know Joe Sullivan has, because we do have to have a practice gym in order to hold the tournament. So there are a whole lot of issues that when you start putting this thing together, and I'm not speaking just because we want to have the tournament to continue here, but if you're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's not do it wrong. My view, if it doesn't pass, it is kind of an all or nothing, because if it doesn't pass and you say we wait 5 years, the tournament's gone. At that point, what's the purpose? Is it just doing it for the HCC to hold basketball games there? I think that's a different discussion 5 years from now. I think what Mary Ellen did was bring in a set of eyes from outside to say, Hutchinson, you need to look at this facility. It's 62 years old. And I think we can all agree we don't want to have another building that is rarely used and somewhat dilapidated in our front door area, where you've got newly renovated Hutchinson High School, newly renovated Gowan Stadium, a beautiful HCC campus, and the #1 tourism attraction in the state of Kansas, the Cosmosphere, all right there, to have a building kind of falling apart.
Talk a minute about going forward, if this is placed on the ballot, what the committee's thoughts are in terms of how we would try to educate the public in terms of why they should vote yes for this.
Well, we would stress the factors that we've been talking about this morning, but as Bob has indicated, I think the #1 factor, well, the two #1 factors are community usage and community pride. And I think this vote will be determined on whether people in the city of Hutchinson want community pride or whether we want a 62-year-old building. If the citizens are willing to give us a go-ahead on this, the next 6 months will be spent with the architect and a concept that candidly, the committee was wowed by the concept that came from the Denver architect. Did a phenomenal job at this point. It is a concept. It will have a process of improvements because we've seen things during this process that aren't right. I had a gentleman last night at dinner say, we need better ADA railings on that second floor for his safety. The guy goes to every game that I know of. Those are the kind of things that will be developed if we get the approval to do this. I think there's members on the committee that are very willing to be an integral process working with the city, the college, and the architects to make this the very, very best that it can be. Do we have a big selling job? Yes, but it will boil down to whether the citizens of Hutchinson want the sports arena to be a grand facility for the future or, and I will say it, 20 years from now, do we want another Memorial Hall? The other thing that probably hasn't been addressed too much by the city is as this gets older, if it's not renovated now, the city will be dumping more costs into this to just stabilize it. Just the plumbing is old, the electrical is old, the infrastructure needs to be redone.
Thanks, guys.
Well, the fact that it's not air conditioned has limited its usefulness for years. And so I think that is a key component to doing all this updating, that you have to get that in there.
Nancy, thank you for saying that because I think that brings up an issue. In early January, the Chamber of Commerce is using the sports arena for a dinner that will bring 1,000 people together. It's the only place that you can put that many people in Hutchinson. But we can't have that dinner in May, June, July, August, September.
Oh, no, not at all.
Leanne Cox with the Convention Visitors Bureau sees many, many uses that are not available. Can we put those into numbers? It's very difficult. We will work very, very diligently, and we have Carter File and the board of the HCC. They have stated that this will become a community building, and we are planning on making it a community building for the citizens of Hutchinson.
John, I had one question that may not have an answer yet, but should the legislature decide to move local elections to November as they said they would this year, would that go into effect in 2015 or
No.
would that not go into?
It would be at least 16 into probably
Okay.
17, depending
So we
upon the
definitely
election
will
cycle.
have an election in April.
Yeah,
Okay.
no doubt.
Jade, maybe John could expand on why we picked April, because there aren't, unless we ask for a special election, which we didn't think it was appropriate for people to pay costs for a special election, there is no fall election in
Yes,
2015.
Correct.
And so we either do it and save money at the April election, or you don't have a very good time to go to
Correct.
the people.
When would the community expect to see something going on there if they did approve this?
That's actually in your council packet, buried within the midst of it, but I will give you a quick synopsis of it. Thanks.
No,
was
it's
gonna say.
no, it's
We'll give you books after this. that
Okay.
are-
These fancy books we printed up, though.
John didn't even share those fancy
Happy to
books
share
with
those
us.
Yeah.
with you
I'd like
all.
Well,
We just,
For
we just-
29
didn't want you
for 29
distracted.
million, for 29 million, we want our own book.
Yeah, you want your own book.
All right? That's all I'm saying.
We'll foot the bill for these. So it would probably take us well into the fall to complete design documents if it was approved in April and financing was approved, and that would allow us to probably break ground. We obviously don't like to break ground in the midst of winter, but it would allow us to break ground at the very, very beginning of 2016, and that would, or 2016, excuse me. And if you did approach it as a phased project, which we might recommend, simply because you don't want to turn this entire building into a a closed-off zone for 2 years, you could complete these phases sequentially so that once you've built the new, you could turn those spaces over and begin some of the renovation within. But we could see the doors open to the entire complex March of 2017. That would be sort of the expectation of the entire process.
John, what would be the sequence of when the sales tax would actually go into effect?
More than likely, if it would approved at the April ballot, collections would start in October. It's usually at the beginning of the quarter, and I know in our previous quarter sent that we've been approved on the street project. It's always been that October following the April election. But it potentially could be the beginning of the next quarter, which could be July 1. We just need to research that a little bit further.
So potentially 15, 18, 20% of this could be paid for even before it would be reopened?
Start as far as the collections, yes.
As far as the collections?
Yeah.
Which was similar to what happened, I think, in Wichita, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, the Intrust Bank Arena was an interesting project.
Yeah.
I think they actually, it was a sunsetted sales tax 3 years that they actually collected all the money before they completed the project. But obviously they've got a bigger sales tax base. But the 0.35% essentially generates, I think we came up with a little over $3 million a year. Let me look here. I don't have that note here, but yeah, it would be basically pay it out over how much? It does generate over $3 million. Yeah. Okay.
Mayor, if I might say, one of the reasons that some of us are very, very excited about this is some of us remember back when we worked on the Gown Stadium project. I never realized how important Gown Stadium was to community life until we finished that project. I did support it, but I didn't ever realize how valuable it would be for the community until we built it. The usage there has far exceeded, I think, anybody's expectations. And I think this would be an equal situation for the community. So we would hope that you would direct John to proceed per the committee's recommendations and bring something back to you for possible final approval. Time is limited here.
Yep.
So if additional funding sources were procured through sponsorship or naming rights, that would just sunset the sales tax
Yes,
earlier?
Yeah. And there's some details on how that would function. I just know that some of the sponsorship money that we all hear about around the country, not going to be the kind of dollars that are going to be generated here in Hutchinson. So I wouldn't want to say that, boy, that's going to save, we'll pay it off 2 years earlier, unless somebody wants to donate, $6 million, then we'll be in pretty good shape and we'll name it after you. So.
But that's a good
yeah.
point, that we're going for a certain amount. We're not just laying it out there that it will be 10 years, period. When we have collected what we need, then that's the end of it.
Yeah, and again, as we work through the bond language, how those sales tax can be structured, we'll have to be very clear on the ability to sunset it at a cap amount or, and that's really what the committee had talked about, is that, if we say it's maybe 10 years, maybe it pays off in 8 years or 8.5 years because sales tax receipts have been, a lot better over that period. So more details, and we certainly will be prepared to address that prior to your approval of setting the referendum.
Okay. Well, do you have another comment to make?
No, Ron, is the committee going to be the marketing entity for this? I mean, are you going to be the ones who are out promoting the election? I mean, because I think there are limits on what we can do.
There are.
We can't do anything.
Yeah.
The committee, many members of the committee are interested in promoting this. We've also heard from many other people in the community on the short notice that this has been aware that they're interested in helping. The actual structure hasn't been set up.
Okay.
But would be soon.
Okay.
Well, I would like to thank the committee I think they've done a tremendous amount of work and brought back some really, really interesting things. I know when this came up, what did we say, a year ago? That, 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago almost.
That,
yeah.
you know, I didn't foresee anything quite like this. And so I'm certainly moving towards being much more excited about it and hope that we can move forward, and really would like to thank the committee for all their work, and hope they'll stick with it and keep plugging away on it. Do you actually need a formal?
No, I
Just-
guess my thought might be just, again, a lot to take in today is maybe on January 6th, we'll put this back on your agenda with a little more information on, what the ballot might look like. Not to say you have to approve it that day, but to direct us to fine tune that. We could approve that at the January 20th council meeting then. Or it's up to you. If you're ready, January 6th, hopefully we could do it. We could do it then as well. But, or you can tell us, direct us to, move forward on developing the referendum question, and we'll proceed with that.
Does anyone have any preference?
I'd
Well-
like the chance to read the book.
I think
we want
that's
the book.
why it's appropriate you have some time.
All right.
Well, we do, but I mean, I guess I would, since I played the devil's advocate all day on this, I guess I would just say I'm convinced of the need to make these improvements. I'm convinced that we have to make sure this does not become a Memorial Hall or a Wiley building. And so with that in mind, if the council and the committee are convinced that we should go after this 100%, I mean, I would just direct staff to go ahead and put something together for us to look at, so that we can get this process moving, because if this is going to be in April, we don't have a week to waste.
Right, and to put staff on, we
We can
never
move-
know what's kind of coming in the future, and so to give staff a little more time to.
Yeah, that would be appropriate. I think give
do
us
it.
time to flush
let's
all
give
I
that
would
out.
be in
Let's give you
support
the
of that,
direct-
Bob.
Yeah, let's give you the direction now to get moving on
Okay.
this
All right.
aggressively, because I haven't heard any significantly negative questions.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we all want the community to have a conversation about it.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what the referendum will do.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have a consensus? We're in support of allowing staff to move forward on that referendum.
Yep.
All
We
right.
will proceed.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you all who worked on that. If it'd be okay, I think we should take a 10-minute break.
Can we do the unsafe? Oh,
You want to do that first?
well. there may
John,
be
we're
some
on our
people
second
here.
beverage.
John, we're taking a break. See, you get to get up and just walk out at different times. We're taking a break.
Yeah, I see everyone up here almost has two beverages going.
You messed with my plan.
Yeah.
You know what? I told you. This plan was going to be based
use that other 3% instead of to the convention center.
I
We
thought
could just
that.
get it to-
I thought that.
to the arena.
Oh,
That's why I asked if it
Yeah.
could be
We're trading one white elephant for another.
Yeah, let's not create any more
no, guess.
albatrosses.
Transfer taxes, I think it makes perfect
I was
sense.
thinking just where we're getting more than expected. But what about the more than expected? That's why if we had a. Ron?
Okay.
All right, we are reconvened. Would the clerk please call the next item?
Item 9B, consider structures determined to be unsafe and dangerous.
Good afternoon, Council. Trent Maxwell, building official for the city. I come before you today to bring our unsafe structures back. We did have our hearing. That was November 4th. We did publish that. That was published on November 7th. The owners were notified by certified mail. We are at the process now to consider a couple changes with our original motions. By the direction of council on our last meeting, we gave 619 East Avenue D a 30-day extension to see what the progress, if they met their timeline promises, and they have. And part of my motion today is to extend that time another 30 days. The house is sheetrocked, so this will probably get them finished up, I believe, on their part. A couple other things that have changed. If you look at your list, 520 West Avenue A and 115 East Avenue D did pull demolition permits and demolish those on their own, and those are complete. 907 East First is a property where they signed the consent for us to demolish it, so we're just asking for that to come off the demolition list. And 716 West Avenue A did pull a demolition permit, but has made little progress, and so we're keeping that one on the condemned list so we can take care of it. The next step for council is to, as far as one of the options, is to authorize staff to proceed with the process to secure bids, to remove the structures and or give any extensions to property owners to rehabilitate their home. The motion that I am presenting to you is just a 30-day extension for 619 East Avenue D, and the rest to proceed with our securing bids. There are some owners, property owners, that I did notice today, some in which were not here even on the hearing. I don't know if you want to hear anything from them, but this concludes my proposal to you, unless you guys have any questions for me on our houses.
So Trent, when you said, have you personally had contact from some of those homeowners who had not previously?
By either phone, some have come in and talked to staff. None have presented the timeline requirement to propose how long it's going to take and what steps they're going to do to make any repairs. It's been general questions that we've discussed. The 619 East Avenue D is the only one that actually proposed a timeline and has met their timeline requirements.
I thought I saw her in here earlier.
Yeah, she was.
I
She
felt
had
badly that
she had a meeting, so.
stayed so long.
You've inspected the property on
Yes.
Avenue D?
Yep.
Yeah.
In fact, they got all their roughing inspections, meaning their electrical, plumbing, et cetera. Framing, they had some framing deficiencies. They've got all those corrected, and they've got it sheetrocked. So their next step is going to be a little plumbing for sinks and texture and paint, and so.
Well, good for them. I'm glad to hear that.
Good for them.
I would certainly move to approve a 30-day extension on that property, 619 East Avenue D.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Prowett?
Yes. And
The next motion, Cindy, if you could look at that. So.
So do we have a motion for the removal of 520 West Avenue A and 115 Avenue D and 907 East First?
I would so move.
Second.
All right, and here, is there any further discussion on that? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Prowett?
Yes. And then we have one more.
I would move to approve the solicitation of bids through Central Purchasing to demolish the structures located at 716 West Avenue A, 1027 East B, 321 East D, 401 East E, 712 South Maple, 601 North Monroe, 717 North Monroe, 17 North Nelson Accessory Building, 628 North Plum, 545 East First, and 510 East Third.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, I'll give you a moment here in just a second. And so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by council? And if we have anyone in the audience that would like to address council on that, you may come to the podium, please, and state your name and address. And that we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes.
My name, Jeff Mack, address 313 North Main, Aladdin Heating and Cooling. The property 717 North Monroe is one of 4 houses that I've gotten collateral for a loan. Nothing's been done with it. Actually, I didn't pay the taxes on it. I let the county sell it at the tax auction, but unknowns to me, Mr. Sullivan pulled it out with another one for structural reasons or some reason. So I'm still the owner of this property. It needs a little work, and I hate to see anything tore down, but I'm not going to argue with Trent too much on it. But what I was wondering was if I could find a nonprofit church or housing that would want to take the work and do it in a timely manner, according to Trent's byline, if I could give it to that rather than, I don't know if that's even possible, but it's an asset just like the sports arena, put some money into it, fix it up. I'd like to see a church or somebody fix the money up. I just signed the property over, but to do that, I think I'd probably have to have an extension or something before you would vote to destroy it. But that's what I would like to do anyway, just to give it to some church or something, because it's actually 2 houses. The part in between needs to be tore down and some stuff. But either way, if you give me like an extension to find a nonprofit group to take it over, I'd like to do that. But if not, I'm not going to cry over it. Trent's always been fair on the stuff. So okay.
Okay.
Any questions before I leave?
I don't know that there's any questions for you per se. Trent, I'm not visually
Yeah, I missed all the committees because October 1st I thought the county had sold it, so I was done with it.
Oh.
And then come back November after Trent told me like November 6th, because I found out that I still owned the property. So that's why I missed the committees to even try to fix it. But anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trent, can you maybe address, I know by the time a home reaches this point and is put on this list, do you think it's anything a nonprofit would want to assume, or would the cost be so tremendous to try to bring it up to?
What I've learned from the nonprofits, we have gone to them with other properties. 229 East 13th is a prime example. That was purchased and rehabilitated. It's not quite finished, but that one we pulled off of our demolition list. And we had approached a lot of nonprofit companies, and the answer we got, if they did not have the money at that time to go and do all the repairs to fix it, they did not want to take the property. So it has to be a property that they have funding for, and that they can see probably a short expense to get it done. I don't believe this would be unfortunate for Jeff's desire to gift it. I don't think it would be a property that they would want to take on. I see too many challenges that they would want to work through.
Okay.
Trent, when we get to this point, let's just talk kind of about the timing. So council approves this today. You start the process of getting bids. How long does that take?
It'll probably take a week to 2, probably 2 weeks to get our bids back.
Okay, so you get the bids back. Then let's say you approve somebody. How long does that take? A week?
Yeah, we'll come back for the approval of the bids here, so we'll have to get back on the agenda.
Okay. So basically, we could approve everything today, give this gentleman time to try to get something in line in the next 30 days, and you could come back to council if he's got some changes before we would act, correct?
And I don't know, Paul, if there's any legal.
Well, you're approving the solicitation of bids at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, means you're gonna knock it down.
Unless in 30 days we decide not to.
Unless Bob goes out and changes himself to the.
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that we've been in a situation before, and if we give a 30-day extension, if Jeff can't get anything done, then we bring it back to council, then we do the solicitation of bids again, and we go through the process. If we just say, well, no, we're done with it, then we're taking somebody who's at least trying to do something with the building, and not giving them the opportunity to at least try to do something. So I don't know.
So is there a way to do a last-minute reprieve on it? So if we
I
put
guess
it
if
out
you
there
don't
and it all
approve
kind
the
of is
bid.
set in motion to move forward, and if he is able to come in and say, I have found
A group.
a
The-
group to take it.
And I
The-
don't want a slumlord because they'll just sit there, you know.
The challenge I see with it is a couple parts. One, what kind of time frame are we working with the new person? How long is it gonna take them to obtain the property and get a timeline in? The other part is if we do seek out bids, sometimes our bids are based on the whole list. And so if you isolate that, I don't know if that would be a good representation to the contractor if we start pulling houses off after they were hoping to get all the bids and therefore they reduce the price per house. I don't know how that would weigh in, but I could see some of those discussions happening.
So what you're saying is that we should just tear the property down and move on?
Or remove it from today's bid demolition.
Correct. Either do like you did on 619 and grant an extension and not have this be part of the bid securing. And I would say, and I've met with Jeff several times, all these owners, we do send certified mailers out. The reason why it was pulled off the auction list is because it was on our demolition list. And so that is, he knew it was going to be demolished. He didn't want a new owner unknowing of the process, buy the property at the tax sale and find out that all he's done is purchased a house that's going to be demolished, so.
Well, my concern would be that by the time it's reached this point, that it would be, that it would have
Past
some
the
pretty
point.
substantial needs for a group to take it on and for a group to want to take it on and have the funding. I feel like it'd be kind of a way down the road type of thing. So,
Got a motion and a second.
all right, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address any of the other properties? We
Thank
have
you,
a couple of
council.
gentlemen.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good morning. My name is Tony Railsback. I own the property at 601 North Monroe. When this whole process got started, I was halfway across the United States. I had immediate family that was next to dead, and now they are dead. And now I'd like to get back involved again and try to get a short extension, see if I can put together a timeline, meet with Trent, whoever we need to get going with to try to get a timeline set up to do the work.
Trent, to clarify, none of these properties are occupied, right? So this would not be your residence. Is that correct?
Right.
Is this a rental that you have, or do you have several properties?
It once upon a time it was a rental, but it's probably going to get put back just to a single dwelling unit. I would probably, I'm getting real close to retirement, and that would be kind of a get up in the morning, something to do thing. There's things that are going to have to be done ASAP, like, in the next 60 days. But, as far as making it a real sellable piece of property, the windows are going to have to be fixed. There's a portion of the roof that needs replaced. There's some foundation work that needs to be done. That is probably the primary thing. So I guess maybe I'm asking for a short extension to kind of at least put a timeline together, visit with Trent or whoever I need to visit with, Landmark Commission or whoever that is.
So
I would have done it before, but like I said, I was out of the state, on something that I couldn't get away from.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, you said in kind of having more time to do it at retirement, like when is your retirement projected to be? Probably this summer's, late spring, summer's when I'm going to retire, but there's going to have to be some stuff done before that. If I, there's some windows to be repaired, that's something I can do on weekends, just
start the process.
Yeah, again, Trent, I'm not remembering which property this is. I know some of them we saw had some really substantial problems or issues that would take a tremendous amount to repair.
Yeah, I apologize. I wasn't aware that they were going to be here, or maybe I would have, and their direction, and I would have brought those to show you again. This was a two-story house. This was a detached garage. The back awning going over the stairwell. There's an outdoor metal stairway in the back, and the awning is hanging by a couple nails.
It's gone.
It's gone, so that was a big plus. And the foundation showed a limestone stacked foundation with spaces 4 to 5 foot on each side of the stone that was open, where the foundation just deteriorated. It's a blue house.
And that being said, it's only on one end of the house. It's not like the foundation all the way around the whole house.
That was the east side face of Monroe. On his, I haven't spoke to Tony. I know him and Jeff spoke once before. This might be a little different than Jeff's, because I've gone through Jeff's house in detail. I've met with him and visited with him several times on it. Tony, I've never heard any expression either way other than brief conversation with Jeff right here. So if it's something you want to see if he can create a timeline that you're comfortable with, again, I would push this back to the 619 East Avenue D motion, something similar to that. So we're not confusing our contractors with what they're getting bids for. And if that's your desire to do that, my concern with the house from the beginning was the foundation, the awning, the broken windows, the roof. There is some damage on the back area and what used to be a sunroom. And the biggest thing when I look at any of these projects is, one, are they being maintained? What is it going to cost to repair them? And we could probably go in detail on the foundation with Tony and see if he's got the means to repair it properly. I see the bids or the permits that come in for the foundation companies, and they're not cheap, and so that's why his is on the list.
To give you a brief background, I've been with Tech now for 15 years, but before that I worked as a construction supervisor for almost 25, so I'm, quite adaptable. Like, I don't think I would do the foundation, but the roof repairs and that type of stuff, that's cakewalk.
Well, typically we do a 30-day extension, and with this weather, I'm not sure much progress could be made. So, but what are your thoughts, Trent?
I think if you give him any extension, it would be to propose what his plan is. He probably needs to do a cost analysis, I believe, and really figure out the foundation is a key part of this. So if he's committed to getting it fixed, he needs to know if he's not going to do the foundation, who is he going to hire, how much is it going to cost, and how long is it going to take for him to secure that contractor to fix that part of it, and then come back, if you wish, after that 30 days and present the plan. Like I say, I don't know what his means are. I don't know time frame or what his expectations are. One of the other ones that proposed their time was a year. I wasn't comfortable with a year, and that's why I brought them here and did not issue them a building permit or work with them on their time frame. I thought that was too far out.
Well, I know they're not in our packet this time as they were a month ago, so I don't know if you can remind me if the taxes were delinquent on this one. Nearly all of the properties on that list had delinquent taxes of 3 years. So
2 on this one, I believe. I'm not on the list to be sold, but yes, they are delinquent taxes on it.
I just feel like if there's a real difficulty in even maintaining such a base level of I guess maintenance for a home as to pay the taxes on it, would there be the ability to fix the foundation? And are we just kicking this down the curb, I guess, another few months?
Well, after, I hate to say this, the passing of this family member, I do have some money to play with. There again, if they're just going to knock the house down, I'm not going to go pay the back taxes. But, if I'm given some kind of time frame to work with that's comfortable with everybody, I don't have a problem going down and paying them.
So what's the desire of council? And I think we're probably talking a pretty tight time frame. I mean, we're not talking years down the road.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Trent, aren't
Totally
you talking about
understandable.
just 30 days for him to come back with a plan, a detailed budget analysis, including, of course, the taxes being repaid? Isn't that what you're discussing?
Yeah, on the taxes portion, that's really not an issue or concern of mine. Mine would be more of, if you approve his timeline, then that could be a contingency to get those taxes paid with the approval of the timeline. I think he expressed that he wouldn't pay the taxes if we were gonna demolish it. So if we didn't
Right.
approve the timeline in 30 days, it sounds like we'll just take it down, and that way he doesn't pay those back out taxes.
Yeah, but I would just like to see the taxes as part of his budget.
Okay,
That's all.
not a problem.
Good.
So would you like a separate motion?
Or a substitute motion?
Cindy? Like a motion?
Well,
to
can we
approve
just
the
amend it?
Yeah, we've got one more person that I think would like to address
Oh.
council, so I don't know if you'd like to get direction on all of them at that point.
Yeah, you might wanna wait for the
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony.
Uh-huh.
And we had another gentleman that would like to address his property.
My name is Harold Warner. I work for the Hutchinson Correctional Facility. We have a position out there that we're trying to fill, and I've been working 6, 7 days a week excessively. There's no chance I'm going to retire effective the 3rd of January. Property I'm referring to is 401 East Avenue E is in Eckerd. I've been trying my best to work on it. I have put a new roof on the garage. I put a new door on the garage. And I just now had all the fencing taken out so we can clean up the property, make it look more feasible. And I need to have the tag, whatever you call it, taken off of there. I've had several people out there to look at it, and they see the condemned whatever sign on there. There's no chance of getting any help with it whatsoever.
Do you mean as in hiring a contractor to assist?
Yes. I've called umpteen of them, and they come out there and never bother to call back. And I can think of it because that sign is stapled up on there.
And
Can't
Mr.
be
Warner,
defaced or anything.
Is this a property that you intend to live in, or is it an investment property?
I'm planning on fixing it up if possible. With that notice up there, it can't be fixed up. Nobody will do that.
But so you're gonna fix it up to live in it, or you're gonna fix it up to sell it?
Sell it, rent it, anything.
Okay.
There's no back taxes on it. I just paid the tax on it yesterday.
Okay.
So I must be serious with it.
Trent, can you comment on this particular property? Because like I said, we don't have it in our packet this time, so.
Yeah, this is the one directly across from Elmdale. It's on the corner. It's a 2-story. Siding is not painted, so it's, if you're familiar with the house now. The condemned sign that he's referring to, we do it on every house that we're demolishing. I don't know why the contractors won't call him back, or I haven't heard that. But again, it goes back to one of the things that we request, and that's our timeline. And the timeline is what we present to you to decide if you're comfortable with whoever they hire based on what their time is that they're proposing to repair the home. Official timeline hasn't been given, and that probably is due to contractors not returning calls, but that is essential for us to know what we are promising or what we're going to hold off, to know how long is it going to take. So
I can sense a little frustration, and I think I'm there with you, because this council, it seems like, is always willing to work with people, and it's pretty much an act of Congress to get a home demolished. It's a very long 6 to 9 month process, and we're down to the wire, and we're just hearing from people. That just boggles my mind, you know. And I mean, I guess if we're willing to work with them some more, that's fine, but we really limit the amount that we can get done this year.
Right, it certainly puts everything, I agree, I can appreciate Trent's frustration that we give him kind of a job to go out and do, and then we kind of backpedal on him. But you're right, it really puts the homeowner on a very tight time frame, because we have been so far down the road on this coming to this point. I don't know, Mr. Warner, what do you think it would take to make some substantial progress on this?
Well, I'm still in the process of trying, when I get a day off, to figure whether it would be more feasible to tear it down or to fix it up. But I can't get anybody in there to give me bids, so I can figure out what it's gonna cost to fix it up.
Okay. And so what would be your request to council? Are you looking for 30 days to come up with this plan, or what do you feel like you need to be able to come to a decision?
The 30 days for sure. I'm a qualified heavy equipment operator, and I know I could go in there and tear it down myself a lot cheaper than they're gonna get a bid for. And if that's what it comes to, I guess that's what'll happen.
And we do have a few of these on the list that have already made that decision, right? The 3 that were in the last motion, they've torn it down themselves.
So what would council like to do with this?
Jade?
I talk too much. I mean,
It's Christmas, Jade, okay? I'd say we give the man an extension, he's paid the taxes on it.
Well, if we were to have a separate motion, then we would give a 30-day extension to the North Monroe, both North Monroe properties and the Avenue E property. I don't know that that's going to result in a whole lot, but at least we're giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Well, that's a leap of faith, and
Yeah.
I guess Mr. Warner's here and making his request, and we ought to be somewhat sensitive to that. And we wish you the best, but perhaps 30 days is reasonable.
30 days is
My thought.
Do we just amend the motion?
Yeah.
Well, just one on the motion, the 717 North Monroe will remain on unless you're changing your
okay.
opinion on that.
No,
That was the donation.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the donation, the
Okay.
nonprofit. Right.
the amendment would be to amend the previous motion to extend 30 days notice to 601 North Monroe
And
and 401 East Avenue E. Right? Those are the 2 we just talked about.
Mm-hmm. So are you making that a formal amendment?
That's a formal amendment.
I'll second that.
Right, so we're amending the first motion. So we have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll on that?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Prowett.
Yes. All right, you have 30 days, and Trent just asked one more thing of you. Could you maybe give very clear direction to these homeowners as to the expectation within the next 30 days, and basically where we're gonna be at that time?
Yes, I'll visit with them out in the hall after this.
Okay,
And then
thank you for coming.
Thanks, Trent.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and we still need to take action, though, on the last item there.
Okay, I would move to approve the solicitation of bids through Central Purchasing to demolish the structures located at 716 West Avenue A, 1027 East Avenue B, 321 East Avenue D, 712 South Maple Street, 717 North Monroe, 17 North Nelson Accessory Building, 628 North Plum, 545 East First, and 510 East Third.
All right, and I know we had a motion and a second on this previously. I don't know if that's appropriate to redo it since we've changed it so much. Or,
This is why we pay Paul. He'll fix it.
We're doing our best to follow you, Mayor.
Paul, are we okay to get a second on this and move
All right,
forward with
let
it?
Let me just clarify, basically extended 30 days on 601 North Monroe and 401 East E, right?
Right.
Okay. Those having been extended, then you have the remaining properties, and you actually had a pending motion and second on that.
Correct.
Right.
And now we have enough.
Yeah, and you may just want to agree from the person that made the motion, the person that made the second, that you've now excluded 601 North Monroe and 401 East E.
I think so, because Jade is the person who originally made the motion, and she has just reclarified with the correct reading of the addresses. And Mr. Bush, you had seconded, and are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion regarding these properties? Is there anyone else in the audience that needs to address the council regarding these properties? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Prowett.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 9C, consider appeal of employee termination by Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 7 and Lorenzo Boehringer.
All right, and on this issue, I believe the way we're going to go through this is we will have Mr. Boehringer's, either himself or his counsel, speak to us for 10 minutes, if you would.
All right, thank you.
And we'll see if council has any questions. We'll then hear from the city. Same thing, we'll see if council has any questions, and then we'll also hear if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address council.
Thank you. My name's Don Aubrey. I've assisted FOP Lodge Number 7 in pursuit of this grievance and arbitration regarding the termination of Mr. Lorenzo Boehringer. There's been an arbitration proceeding and a decision by an arbitrator that Mr. Boehringer should be reinstated. That decision by the arbitrator was rejected by the city manager, and our appeal is from that decision. We provided the city council with some documents and some discussion, and we're not going to repeat those here today. I do want to talk about some background, if I could. There's a lot of this case that's about overreactions, and one of them is overreaction to what happened with a couple of 40 and 50-year-old Supreme Court cases, Brady and Giglio. Those cases were decided in 1963 and 1972, and they had to do with the right of an accused to have information that's relevant to his defense be provided to him. Brady was about an individual whose co-defendant confessed to the murder that he was convicted of, and that was the Brady case. The Giglio case was about an individual whose co-conspirator made a deal with the government that he was going to receive leniency in return for his testimony. That information regarding the leniency was not provided to defense counsel so that that witness could be impeached. So what comes from Giglio is that impeachment evidence, something that will challenge the credibility of a prosecution witness, has to be provided to defense counsel. These cases came to the foreground again a few years ago with three notorious cases. The case of Alaska Senator Ted Stevens, a case of an environmental prosecution against W.R. Grace Company, and a drug prosecution in Florida. All these were federal prosecutions, and in those cases, the prosecution did not provide information relevant to that case. In the Ted Stevens case, there had been a complaint by a federal investigator about the prosecutors in that case in prosecutorial misconduct. That complaint was not provided to defense counsel. In W.R. Grace, someone who was represented as a neutral witness, an executive of the company, was in fact very involved in preparing the prosecution of the case. That information wasn't provided to defense counsel. In the Shaman case, the federal drug prosecution in Florida, an informant was meeting with defense counsel and providing that information to the prosecution. That information was not disclosed. So all of these cases, there was a $600,000 attorney fee award in the Shaman case. So those cases left the Justice Department with pie in its face. So it was an embarrassment to the Justice Department. So the Justice Department passed guidelines. They really emphasized the importance from that point forward for the prosecutors to fulfill their responsibility to provide exculpatory information, including impeachment information. But if you notice, all of those cases had to do with information definitely directly related to that case. And what's happened is that prosecutors all over have said anything that might be impeachment, we have to produce, and we're going to disqualify any police officers who might be impeached. And that has been an overreaction, and we'll explain a little bit about what's happening here. The reaction among prosecutors and the effect that that's had on police departments has been described as one internal affairs captain from another department as hysteria. Brady and Giglio are a duty to disclose. It's meant to help the criminal defendant have a fair trial. It's not meant to punish the prosecution, and it's not meant to punish police officers who might have an infraction in their record. Now, the conduct of which Officer Boehringer was accused, even if we accept the conclusions that the police department made, was that he failed to disclose information regarding something that had been said by another police officer. And when he was asked in an internal affairs investigation if he knew of any misconduct by the other police officer, he says, no, I don't know of any misconduct. He knew of a comment. This particular conversation with Officer Boehringer was not recorded. So there was a dispute over what question he was asked. Officer Boehringer recalled being asked if he was aware of any misconduct by the other officer. Officer Boehringer wasn't aware of any misconduct. He was aware of a statement the other officer had made regarding having received a sexual favor. And he regarded that as a joke. It was not true. The other officer had not received a sexual favor. Officer Boehringer perceived it as a joke, didn't report it until he was asked directly about it. What about this particular comment? And then he acknowledged in the second interview that he had said that. But even if the council were to accept the department's conclusion that Mr. Boehringer wasn't completely truthful in this matter, this does not disqualify him from being a police officer, and it does not impact his ability to testify as a police officer. The materials that we provided you show that under Kansas law, this evidence regarding Officer Boehringer would never be admissible in court. There's no conviction. There's nothing even close to warning a conviction in this case. And if you'll also note the evidentiary materials you've been given, the vast majority of those materials have to do with the conduct of another officer. And we'll note that we did not pursue an arbitration on behalf of that officer. The misconduct was serious in that case, and we understand the city council's concern about the reputation of the city from that case. But that should not spill over into other officers who have terrific records. Pardon me? There was no evidence that Officer Boehringer participated in any way or was even aware that the other officer had made contact with a citizen. All Officer Boehringer was aware of was an offhand comment by the other officer. That was the full extent of his alleged misconduct. This conduct was brought to an arbitrator, and the arbitrator determined that there was not just cause for discharge. Now, the city manager and city council for the city have attempted to distinguish the arbitrator's award by saying that the evidence of disparate treatment towards Officer Boehringer was not relevant. The evidence in the record and the evidence the arbitrator heard had to do with another police officer who had lied to the department about a police report that he'd filled out. that officer who had lied to the department about a police report was given a warning. There was no suspension, no termination of his employment. The other officer was given a warning. The city manager, attorney for the city, seek to distinguish that by saying, well, it wasn't an internal affairs investigation, it was an internal matter. It wasn't as serious. It was as serious. This officer lied about a police report. That brings this closer to Giglio than anything that happened with Officer Boehringer, because this was the document that are presented to the prosecutor for prosecution. This officer who was given a warning lied about a police report, and the police report was false because it would be given as saying that this is contemporaneously recorded information about a call I took. Instead, he was given it 3 weeks later. So it was serious misconduct by the other officer, and that serious misconduct warranted only a written warning. The proposal here has been to end the police career of another officer. Now, obviously the city council is going to act in the interest of the city. So what is the interest of the city in this case? Well, first, the interest of the city is in its standing as an entity that honors its contracts. The collective bargaining agreement, the agreement with the FOP says we will only terminate officers for just cause. We've had an arbitrator determine there was no just cause here on solid grounds because there was disparate treatment. There was another officer whose conduct was at least as serious who received only a written warning. For just cause to exist, there has to be equal enforcement of the rules. There was not here. So to uphold this charge here would essentially render the just cause provision a nullity. It was the city council several years ago that recommended to the FOP that the contract include a provision for an arbitrator to replace the old 3-person panel who decided grievances. Bring in a professional, bring in an arbitrator to hear these disputes. And that's what happened here. A professional with 30 years experience in resolving labor disputes came in, heard the evidence, applied his experience regarding just cause, applied his experience regarding personnel matters, and determined it is not just cause to disparately treat one officer over another. You know, the parties, when they choose an arbitrator, they negotiate for. Their agreement is they want to bring in someone with that experience, and it was done so here. The arbitrator had the opportunity to hear all of the evidence. The city manager didn't. The arbitrator was present for the hearing. He administered oaths to the witnesses. He heard the witnesses. He was able to observe their demeanor. He was able to understand the issues in this dispute and rendered his decision recommending reinstatement of Officer Boehringer. So how else is it in the city's interest to reinstate Officer Boehringer? I've read studies, one from the police chief in Georgia, that it cost $59,000 to replace a police officer. You have the cost of training, you have the cost of recruitment, you have the cost of uniforms. It is an expensive proposition to replace a highly trained police officer. Mr. Boehringer was more highly trained than others because he was trained as an elite marksman. He had skills that he brought to this department. Not only did he bring skills, he brought an attitude to the department. Officer Boehringer has received commendations from citizens. He had one citizen who was so impressed by the police work that Officer Boehringer did that she wrote to the police department and said, "I'm glad to see this is how my tax dollars are being spent with employees and police officers of this quality." In his evaluations, his supervisors had recognized that Officer Boehringer was of value to the department. I'd like to introduce Officer Boehringer here. Lorenzo Boehringer is the police officer who we're asking you to reinstate him. Officer Boehringer has been involved in this community. He came through the cadet program through Scouts. He wanted to be a police officer since he was 16. So he came through the cadet program, made it onto the police department. Now he was the liaison for the police department to this cadet program to interest other young people in serving their community as police officers. That's what Officer Boehringer wants to do. He wants to serve his community as a police officer. His record shows that he was very active as a police officer. He accepted extra duty. He accepted this extra role as the liaison to the cadets. He received high evaluations. He is an asset to the city. And as I understand, the police department is not fully staffed now. We have a trained officer who has been recognized as a quality officer, who has been recognized as an officer who is deserving of reinstatement by an experienced labor arbitrator. It's in the interest of the city to honor its contract and to bring an experienced and quality police officer back on the force. That's what we'd ask you to do today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this point for council? Hearing none. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Council. Paul Brown, City Attorney. Council, you've been given an immense amount of information regarding this case, and I apologize for that, but there is much, and we denied you nothing in terms of the information available. And I know you've had an opportunity at least to take a look at the hearing briefs that were submitted. But do not lose sight of why Lorenzo Boehringer was terminated. He was terminated for failing to report the misconduct of another officer, and he was terminated because he lied to his commanding officers when he was being interviewed regarding the conduct of Jamin Ragoza and what was said to him. And this was during an internal affairs investigation. He was specifically asked, was there anything inappropriate relating to the woman who filed the complaint during or after? And he said no. He said no. He lied to his commanding officers during that interview. Now, this all began with Officer Ragoza, and you've seen in materials in the hearing brief that I provided to you the details of Officer Ragoza's contact with a female arrestee. It was a sexual harassment case. He was trying to develop a relationship with her. He put his phone number in her cell phone directory. He contacted her by text, attempted to contact her by phone, made an early morning contact with her very early in the morning after the arrest had occurred. And ultimately there was a complaint filed by her, a citizen complaint that came to the police department and was investigated by the commanding officers. It was investigated by Lieutenants Yingling, Lieutenant Burley, and Captain Hoover. They'd been in contact with the first officer, Officer Ragoza, and were interviewing him. Then they took a break. During the break, Officer Ragoza sent text messages to, and I'll limit it at this point, to Officer Boehringer, and about what he had told him, and that he effed up and the story about the oral sex was a lie. This was right before Lorenzo Boehringer was interviewed by Lieutenants Burley and Lieutenant Yingling. He knew of the misconduct. He was specifically asked whether there was anything inappropriate and failed to state that. He knew that. He'd been immediately reminded before he was interviewed. But he remembered a comment by another officer, but not what he had just received. So he lied to his commanding officers, and he certainly didn't report anything on what Officer Ragoza had done until a second interview. And then he confirms exactly that he had heard these things, that he had received the text messages, and he had lied to his commanding officers as a part of an internal affairs investigation. After the investigation was completed, this information was provided to the District Attorney, Keith Schroeder. And you've also received a copy of the letter from Keith Schroeder. that they wouldn't be used, and it's talking about the officers Ragosa, Officer Bowringer, and another officer. They would not be used as witnesses in any criminal prosecution due to their dishonesty. On December 9th, they were then terminated. We've had issues presented to the council about, well, we're not treating them equally. We're not treating them fairly because they talk about the conduct of a previous officer who failed to complete a report and was not fired. Failed to complete a report, failed to complete an administrative matter, and was not fired, was reprimanded. Officer Bowringer was terminated for lying during an internal affairs investigation. The difference being one's an administrative act, the other one was a citizen complaint, a female arrestee. And the problem with an internal affairs investigation, counsel, when the truth is not told, the misconduct of an officer continues. We trust police officers to provide for the public peace and public safety. We entrust them with the greatest of responsibilities. And when the misconduct of an officer is in question, you cannot allow that to be concealed so that it grows. It must be told. Lying during an internal affairs investigation cannot be tolerated, and that's why the termination occurred. We've provided the specifics on the conduct and on the statements that were made to one another. There's been some question about Brady Giglio and the fact that these Supreme Court cases require exculpatory evidence provided to the defense. In other words, there's something that they can use, and that there was a problem here. And if you want another difference between the prior Officer Graham and Officer Bowringer, both of these matters were presented to the Reno County District Attorney. It didn't result in a letter being issued to Graham, only to Officer Bowringer in this case, that his conduct had reached a level that this would have to be reported. So there is a difference. There's a difference between the two, the nature of the seriousness of the grievance-proven conduct, and a difference, and this is further evidence that this case was different from Graham, is the issuance by the district attorney that this conduct rises to another level. And the letter was issued on that basis that it would impact his future testimony and that this would be a matter that would have to be disclosed. As far as the interests of the city are concerned, yes, we have an interest. We have an interest in our officers telling the truth. They're obligated to tell the truth. If you look at the memorandum of understanding between the city of Hutchinson and the Fraternal Order of Police, in addition to just cause, it says bargaining unit members, excluding probationary employees, shall only be disciplined or discharged for just cause, which shall include, but is not limited to, violations of department rules and regulations or special orders. Within our departmental rules and regulations are, an officer has to tell the truth at all times, whether they're under oath or not. Lorenzo Bowringer didn't do that. He didn't tell the truth. And that's why he got terminated. And that's just cause by definition of our own agreement. So council, we urge you to uphold the termination of Lorenzo Bowringer. It's been through multiple levels by now. It's been reviewed by the chief, Chief Heitschmidt. It's been reviewed initially by the city manager, John Deerdoff. It's gone through arbitration. That advisory opinion has been considered by the city manager again. And the city manager has upheld the termination, finding just cause for the termination of this employee. Council, we're asking you to uphold that. At some point, you have to say the lying has to stop. Because otherwise you get the same argument. Well, Officer Graham lied. Now Officer Bowringer lied. And future officers can lie as well because, well, you wouldn't want to give disparate treatment. It's not disparate treatment. the circumstances are not similar, and the termination should be upheld.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for council?
I had from a legal standpoint, I have a few questions, Paul. I am wondering if the MOU, which states very clearly about honesty at 100% of the time, if that supersedes the need to meet all 7 elements for just cause, like how will that hold up to judicial review? Because it could be argued that equal treatment was not given.
You'll get an argument between Mr. Aubrey and I over that. Now, he has cited some things at the end of his statement about the factors that the district court would review, okay? Whether or not the council has the authority, whether or not the council has substantial evidence to support its decision, and then whether or not the council acted fraudulently, capriciously, or arbitrarily. That would be the review of the court. The 7 standards for arbitration are actually used by the Arbitrators Association. They haven't been adopted specifically by the court. The court says it's a tool. And in the cases that come before the court, those examples are for binding arbitration. We don't have binding arbitration. It's an advisory position.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying that, because I really do think that we need to take our contractual commitments very seriously. But at the same time, do we set a standard where now lying is considered acceptable because we let Graham keep his job? Will that always be the finding of the arbitrator in any case of dishonesty?
Well, it's going to be looked at, because opposing counsel is going to say, I think that's evidence of disparate treatment. Mm-hmm. And you didn't fire Graham. Mm-hmm. And so you can't fire Bowringer because of it. And that's kind of the point. At what point does it stop? And are those circumstances even similar?
Any further questions?
If I might respond to a couple of things that were said.
Okay, we'll do it kind of quickly, and I know we have some audience members that would like to address council.
Very briefly, Officer Ragosa is not before the city council right here. This is not a case about reinstatement of someone who engaged in serious misconduct. And if you recount the text message, Officer Ragosa was confirming what Officer Bowringer knew. The claim, the blown-up claim he had made before about a sexual favor was a lie. Officer Bowringer knew it was a lie. That was confirmed. When Officer Bowringer went in to the internal affairs hearing, he was not aware of any misconduct. There's nothing in the record that shows that Officer Bowringer was aware of the text messages or any of the other contact with the citizen. All he was aware of was a boast that Officer Ragosa had made, which was not true, and which Officer Bowringer recognized to not be true. And disparate treatment is important. Just cause is important. One instance in a career of a quality police officer where he made an error in judgment in not advising his commanding officers about misconduct by another officer. Is that the kind of thing that should end a career when an arbitrator's looked at it and said, no, it shouldn't? Now, with respect to the letter from the district attorney, that's not a talisman that excuses the city from honoring the just cause provision. If you paid attention, that evidence of Officer Bowringer's conduct or alleged conduct would never come before the court, because under Kansas law, that type of evidence is inadmissible. One act of misconduct does not make a reputation for untruthfulness and is not admissible in court. So this would not affect Officer Bowringer's ability to testify credibly and effectively as a police officer.
I wonder if the arbitrator looked at this holistically as we have, and maybe texts from other nights. Do we need to get into that? or not.
I agree, that this isn't necessarily an isolated incident. The first officer has behaved in that manner previously, I think in a manner with grave concern, and shared text with the officer involved. So it's not that there wasn't a precedence of knowing that this could be true, that this is how that officer behaved. I also don't want to go very far into that other
Conversation, text
Do
conversation.
we want to hear, though, from everybody that wants to talk before we?
Yeah, let's
too
hear a little
deep.
bit more from the audience before we maybe see how far into the other things we need to go. I know we have some audience members. We're going to ask that you come to the podium, state your name. You're going to be limited to 5 minutes. We certainly ask that if someone has already stated what you have to say, we don't need to hear it multiple times over. So if we have someone in the audience that would like to address council, please come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Mikhail Bovringer. I am the brother of Officer Lorenzo Bovringer. First, I would like to thank the council members for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak today. I know it means a lot to me and also to my brother. Secondly, I would like to turn personally and thank every single one of you. A lot of you have these buttons on your shirt. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And it also means a lot to this guy over here. I know there's a lot of people that couldn't be here, but there's a lot of people that did show up, and I do appreciate that. And I know he appreciates it even more. Officer Bovringer is a person that one wishes they could mirror. He strives to do his best each and every time he is faced with an objective and never gives up with anything he's faced with. Officer Bovringer has dedicated many years of his life to law enforcement. Like it previously stated, he started his life in the Hutchinson Reno County Explorer program as a cadet at the age of 16, nearly 10 years ago. During the nearly 5 years in the program, he realized that law enforcement was his calling and that this is what he wanted to do and what he wanted to say he does for a living. Officer Bovringer then attended the Hutchinson Community College and graduated in 2008 with a degree in criminal justice. Once the opportunity came about to become a police officer with the Hutchinson Police Department, he knew he could not pass that opportunity up. He applied for the job, went through the merciless interview process, and was later selected for the job and was to attend the next Police Officers Academy. Once in the Police Officers Academy, he was nominated as the class president of the 211th Basic Training Class at the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center. Officer Bovringer excelled in each and every task given during the long and grueling 14-week academy. But that was just the beginning. On March 4th, 2010, after 14 grueling weeks at the academy, Officer Bovringer with the Hutchinson Police Department recited the officer's oath of honor one last time before graduating. The oath reads as follows: "On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public's trust. I always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for their actions. I will always uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state of Kansas, my community, and the agency that I serve." Once out of the academy, Officer Bovringer knew he was far from over and continued to excel during the 3-month field training program and proved that he deserved every ounce of the job he was so humble at receiving. Officer Bovringer completed the field training program approximately 3 months later with absolutely no problems. He then went on to be a superior officer with the Hutchinson Police Department. After only a couple years on the force, Officer Bovringer was awarded and promoted to the sniper position of the emergency response team. He also held the position, as stated earlier, as the advisor of the cadet program that he once was a part of. Lorenzo Bovringer has dedicated every waking moment he had available to not only the city of Hutchinson, but also to the police department. He never gave up any opportunity for overtime on events such as DUI saturation patrols, seatbelt enforcements, standbys for sporting events, or even to fill in on other platoons if they needed extra manpower. And also, according to one of his previous instructors, he was, quote, the finest officer they had the opportunity to teach. That explains a lot. One statistic that really sticks out in my mind comes in the year 2013. On average, the Hutchinson Police Department responds to nearly 40,000 calls for service. In 2013, Officer Lorenzo Boehringer was able to respond to each and every call that he was dispatched to on a daily basis, but still managed to get a total of 28 offenders off of the roadway for driving under the influence. To put that in perspective, the total amount of arrests for DUI for the entire Hutchinson Police Department was 36. That leaves 8 remaining DUI arrests for the remaining officers on that department. That's not saying any other officers weren't working as hard. It's that Lorenzo Boehringer was working just as harder, if not the hardest, on the department. In my opinion, that stat shows that he is nothing short of a hero. If it wasn't for him, one of our friends, family members, or even a loved one could have been tragically impacted by the ever so dangerous drunk driver. I could go on and on forever about the great things that my brother, Officer Lorenzo Boehringer, has contributed, not only to the police department, to the city of Hutchinson, but also to the community that he lives in. He loves what he does as a law enforcement officer. The allegations against Officer Boehringer are nothing short of misinterpretations about statements and a flawed view by the administration. Officer Boehringer has not once lied to the administration, and as he is alleged to have done. An unbiased arbitrator with nearly 30 years of experience has also decided in his favor, and decided that Officer Boehringer was terminated without just cause. To this day, I believe Officer Boehringer has held true to the officer's oath he read back that day in 2010. That's why I ask you, the members of the council, to please vote yes in reinstating Officer Boehringer to the Hutchinson Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone else in the audience who would like to address council?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, esteemed council members. My name is Joe Shalacy. I'm a retired captain for 30 years with a very proud Miami Police Department. More proud to say I am now a citizen, a proud citizen of Hutchinson, a homeowner. And for several hours I've heard, and very proud to have heard, the importance of pride in our, because I own stake in it, our community. You're going to hear family members come up here who have known Lorenzo all their lives. You're going to hear friends come up here and give you testimony that have known Lorenzo for many, many years. But I bring a unique experience, a very unique experience, because not like them, I don't know Lorenzo 20 or 30 years. I only know Lorenzo 3 or 4 years. Being a highly decorated and very educated investigator with the Miami Police Department, one of the first things that I would always look for in an investigation is, who didn't know him that well? What do they have to say about him? And question not only his character, but in question is the pride of this city. The city that I reside, the city that I'm going to raise my son. That's what is in question. And I wouldn't dare step before this esteemed council in your honor and bring my 30 years of reputation from the city of Miami, the majestic city of Miami, if I did not believe in this human being as much as I believe in him. I can sit here for hours and give you example after example of why not only would I go anywhere and entrust my entire life with this man, but if I were a chief of police or a sheriff, the first person that I would go to, the first person that I would bank my entire career on to run my training department is Lorenzo, because I trust him that much. And if I may be allowed to just give you a couple of examples of a man that I don't even know, as well as the people you're going to hear today. Being a transient from Miami, Florida, I uprooted my entire life to come to this beautiful city. And through it became separation anxiety, and I asked my daughters to travel here to be a part of this beautiful city, to be a part of the luminaries. And unfortunately, we had an incredible snow drop, and I couldn't get out of my driveway. This man, not knowing me as well as others, spent an entire morning and part of his afternoon digging me out of my home, digging me out of our home, so my beautiful daughters, who I was separated from, can come here and listen to what I've boasted for so many months about how beautiful and how proud this city was. That's just one example. Another example is I had an infant son who was ill, just a few months old. And as mothers and fathers, you can certainly understand the importance of being at a child's side. And we are in a process of moving a large amount of furniture into our new home. And without a split second, this man volunteered an entire day of himself, along with his brother, to travel 400 miles and move a very large shipment of furniture so I could be at the side of my infant son. Now, maybe to you, that may be minuscule in such a grand scheme of things, especially as the city attorney says, well, the line has to stop somewhere. I would urge you as human beings, I would beg you as human beings, to take each case by case, and as Your Honor stated, look at the entire scheme of it. Look at the big picture. And the big picture is you are losing an incredible asset to this beautiful city. A man that I would bring into my home to protect my family day or night. I would bank my life on it. Bank my life on it. And I say it to you once again, I would certainly not have the audacity to come before esteemed colleagues and bank my reputation if I did not believe in this human being that much. I don't ask you, I beg you, like the Honorable Mayor stated, look at the big picture. Take it case by case. Please, please understand the holistic, everything that we as a community are relying on. This is a man that could be coming to your home to protect your daughter, your wife, your husband. This could be a man going to your traffic accident scene, consoling your daughter, your son, your husband, your wife. As a community, like a man right here before you today, I stand up for what I believe in, because there comes a time where we have to stand up, and I'm standing up, and as a community and as an esteemed panel and council and mayor, I beg you to stand up and believe in this human being. Take it case by case. Please allow this man to go back to work and protect our beautiful community. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Tyson Myers, Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 7 President. What I tell every guy that comes to a meeting where they sign up to be a member, I tell them that it's not my job as a president to get you out of trouble. It's to make sure that you're treated fairly and that you're going to be getting the same punishment as somebody else that does the exact same thing you do, or close to the same thing you do. The reason I'm here in front of you is I sit at the negotiating table every year for the last 6 years. City Council, John Deerdoff, you guys came towards the FOP wanting to change our system to exactly what we have. Have an arbitrator come in, make a decision based on the evidence that's presented. That's exactly what happened. We would not be in front of you if that arbitrator came back and ruled in the favor of the city, wanted to terminate that officer. We're in front of you because that arbitrator said that you don't have just cause and don't fire that officer. That's why we're here. Like I said, if it was the other way around, we wouldn't be having this meeting. I want you to just respect the contract and do what we agreed on 4 or 5 years ago. We brought in a professional to make this decision, make that decision worth something. He knows labor law better than everybody in this room. He heard all the evidence that was presented by the city and by the union. I would like to make sure that is based solely on his decision, someone that knows how the process works and how it should work. Officer Boering is a great officer. He's a very good asset to our police department. I would hate to lose an officer that's that knowledgeable and just that driven. Thank you, and hope you guys make the right decision.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to address council?
Hi, my name is Mitch Harris, and I'd like to thank each of you for your service to the community, and I'd like to thank Lorenzo Bowringer for his service to the community. Had an opportunity to work with Lorenzo right after he got into law enforcement when we were both working for the Reno County Sheriff's Office. And spent quite a bit of time with Lorenzo, and the thing that resounded to me was he was a young man that had the maturity level of a 50-year-old. And I thought to myself, how does this even happen? He completely understands the thing that it takes most of us, a lifetime of raising children and teenagers and young adults, and he was grasping it. And I had an opportunity to be working patrol for the sheriff's office at the same time Lorenzo came out on patrol for the city. And when his brother Mikhail talked about that, he really was that guy. He's that guy that every officer wants to be. And there aren't very many. I'm an old guy. I've known a lot of officers in my life. And Lorenzo would be in the top 5% of all of them I've ever met. He's got a gift. It's a gift that people at the academy and people in his training officers hone. But so many of us would never become the officer that Lorenzo Bowringer is. It's just not possible. I don't know, like I say, it can only be described as a gift. He's just that good. And every officer strives to be like that. He's the type of officer that, like was just said, you want him taking your case. You want him responding if one of your loved ones is injured. You want him coming to an aggravated burglary at your wife's house. You want him to be there because you know he can take care of that. And I just think that if he's still willing to work for this community can't afford not to have him. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and so we'll probably just take a couple more. We seem to be addressing a lot to do with character. Does anyone have anything a little bit on a different vein?
I've known Lorenzo about 6 years. We met in the
Can you
Reno
say your
County. David Post, sorry.
David Post?
Yes.
And if you would state your address.
36 Ensign Drive. I live in South Hutchinson, Kansas.
Thank you.
We met, he was my very first trainee when I was in the jail. So I trained him within the jail division and observed him. Like Mitch said, you know, he knows a lot and he treats people with respect. There was never a circumstance when he was rude or dishonest or anything above beyond what he should have been. He did apply with the police department. He went to the police department after that selection process, and then I was able to work with him on the streets. We both progressed through our careers at the same time. He went to the academy class before me. So we were in the academy at the same time for about 8 weeks. They interchanged about halfway through. So I was able to observe him with the instructors and other future law enforcement officers throughout the state of Kansas. And then we went to our FTO program. You know, we graduated beyond that and we started to work on the streets together. I trust Lorenzo with my life, and on more than one occasion, he was the only one there when I needed somebody to be there. There was a time where he got into a vehicle chase that exited into the county, which is where I worked, and I backed him, and under their policies, he was no longer able to pursue that vehicle, so I took over and led the charge in pursuing this person that had violated a state law. Lorenzo stayed behind me because nobody else was around. My closest backup was 15 minutes away. We did finally get the vehicle to stop, and I had the driver at gunpoint, and Lorenzo was there. You know, had he not been, who knows what would have happened. You know, when you're out there all by yourself and you got someone that's fleeing from you, you don't know why they're running. So I respect the man, and he was a huge asset to the department. I worked alongside him at other jobs, like I said, the sheriff's office, the police department, and he was nothing but exceptional. And it would be an absolute loss for the city and the police department to lose such a quality employee. I urge you to make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Does council have any questions for either council or anyone else that they'd like to hear from?
Yeah, I'd like to, I have a question for Captain Hoover.
Yes.
So if Troy would step up, I'd appreciate that. We've got, well, books, tapes, everything.
Right.
All kinds of stuff. But you were the command officer on the scene. You were there for the majority of the testimonies?
Yes.
Okay, so, and you've been an officer for how long?
25 years.
Okay. And so, after all is said and done, after the review of all of this and all the discussion, do you feel that that Boehringer lied to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. And do you think that termination is appropriate in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Would you do anything different?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to hear that from you.
Okay.
Any other council questions?
Jay, did you have a question?
I was just
Captain
interested in
Hoover?
hearing from administration because those were some incredibly glowing reports from credible people. So I wondered why we were so adamant on the other side. Just the issue of lying.
John Deerdoff,
Yes.
perhaps I could ask you a question. If you would briefly give an overview of and a synopsis of your conclusions in
Sure.
the 7 elements in terms of what
Yeah, and,
led
you
to your
know,
findings?
yeah.
And- And if you could then also add on to that, your conclusions after hearing the arbitrator's report.
Well, let me start with my thought process. You know, terminations are difficult in any part of the organization. And, you know, based on the evidence that I reviewed, that I was given, both written and oral, it was very clear to me that Officer Boehringer was failed to report the misconduct of another officer. And I'm talking fairly serious misconduct. And he lied, that's a big word, during an internal investigation about this conduct of another officer. And, you know, we can argue all day about the level of untruthfulness or lying. We keep referring to the Graham case. I was fully aware of that during this process. And to me, being untruthful about the completion of a report, I didn't get my report, or I've got my report done, I left, I got it done, brought it back, is a lot different than lying during an internal investigation about the serious misconduct of an officer. To me, I can make that difference. Not everybody can. You know, a lie is a lie. But in this case, I made that decision on my part based on the information that I was given. And don't get me wrong, I agree a lot with what was said about Officer Boehringer. He is a fine young man, been a fine officer for the police department. But unfortunately, in that world, lying is pretty serious stuff, particularly about an internal investigation about the misconduct of another officer. And the arbitrator apparently sees all lies as lies, white lies, whatever. I'm not sure what he used, but a lie is a lie is a lie. Didn't differentiate between the two, and that was, I mean, obviously this is not an easy decision, but that was this decision that I made. Unfortunately, you've got to make those decisions. And we're completing the due process at this time.
I appreciate Mr. Deerdoff's explanation of that. In what we have seen over time, I have no reason to not believe that Officer Boehringer has an outstanding character. I don't know what happened on that day, why choices were made. It's interesting that someone used the phrase of protecting my daughter, That's something that has resonated with me throughout us hearing about this. In that whether it was thought to be a joke or not, the actions taken by the first officer and learned of by Officer Boehringer were serious enough. It really concerns me. I have a teenage daughter, and to think that an officer approaches a young woman and has these thoughts, pursues her in this way, that anyone else would hear of that and not take that as a serious offense, that this other officer was a perpetrator, and to cover that over is really disturbing to me. And I guess that's how it has hit me. Do any other council members have any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I think we all have lots of comments. I'm not sure where to start. I guess a couple things. One is, the attorneys are all excited about all these terms and what they mean and the levels and depths of all of that. I think that's all fun for them and their jobs. What really comes down to me as a citizen is that on the whole issue about the giglio, I really don't care what that means. What I do care about is that the district attorney said that he doesn't want Lorenzo Boehringer testifying in his court. That's really what he's saying. Okay, that's serious. That's incredibly serious for in a law enforcement community where, you have to be able to testify. I don't care if you're in charge of the evidence room. You've got to be able to testify in court. And when the district attorney says that I'm not going to have this person in my courtroom unless it is a gross miscarriage of justice, that's an issue. I really don't care about all the discussion about the different laws and all the rest of that. To me, that's an important factor in any police officer, any law enforcement officer's job. You have to be able to do that, and the district attorney's office has to be able to back you. Did Mr. Boehringer lie? I think he did. I think he had enough information. I think he was called in for an internal affairs interview. I think he knew what it was about. So you can call it a white lie, a gray lie, a black lie. You can call it a whatever you want. But at the end of the day, I think there was a factual case there for misrepresenting the facts. What I'm concerned about, and I appreciate the neighbors and the family that have talked about character, but when you're a law enforcement officer, you have to have a higher standard of character because you carry a taser, you carry a weapon, Lorenzo's on the sniper team. I mean, all of those are incredibly difficult positions to have that require an incredible amount of character. And as I read through this, the one thing that I get from a lot of this is that Lorenzo was basically protecting his brothers in blue, which is the exact wrong thing to do. I hear, no, I don't know about this. No, I don't know any of this. Oh, well, then they say, well, what about this text you got? Oh, well, that. Yeah, I do remember that now. I mean, a lot of this stuff came out later. And again, I looked at a report here, and it's the text conversation, that I've been given to by the city attorney, Lorenzo Boehringer's text to the other officer that committed the heinous crime. And basically he's talking about on the job wanting to go out, the Ragosa, wanting to go out and have sexual relations with another person. And Mr. Boehringer's comments here are, let me know if we got a shag or call or 3 to get it done. In other words, let me know if we need to cover a couple of calls so you can go on duty to meet with this other person. So let's think about that for a minute. We have what, probably 5 officers on the street at one time in a shift? So we're gonna take 20% of our on-the-street law enforcement capability out of our system so somebody can go have sex and another officer or officers are gonna cover those calls, putting the public at risk, putting the other officers at risk, putting the people of our community at risk. That's a culture we can't have. We can't have a culture where I'll cover for you while you go do something that's completely inappropriate. We can't have a culture where officers go, I don't know anything about it, I don't know anything about it until you prove to me that I do know about it, and then I go, oh, I thought that was a joke. you can be the best qualified officer in the world, but you have to pass that character test every single day, because you walk in our community to protect us. And in the case of some officers that abuse it, like this Ragosa, we're also potentially your victims. You have to respond at a higher level. And you can't put your fellow officers at risk or this community. So to the question of character, I'm sure Mr. Ragosa is 99% of the time a great guy. But when it comes to that issue, of protecting the community over and above protecting his fellow officers, I think he failed the test. And I think that litmus test is a key for me.
They were just going to correct you, said
said Ragosa.
Yeah, this is tough stuff. This is no fun. You know, I hope Mr. Bowringer, moves on from this. I know how I'm gonna vote if you haven't figured that out yet. But I hope Mr. Bowringer moves on from this to a successful career. I'm sure he's a very honorable man in many ways. I hope he takes this lesson to heart. But that's how I feel.
I would agree with you, Bob, in that I feel like Bowringer is a good guy and probably just made some poor choices. Our officers do a really difficult, thankless job, and I don't know all of the officers on our force, but I just think of like Myers and Underwood, Pickard. I could name a dozen off the top of my head with absolute impeccable integrity. And I guess my biggest concern, even though I feel like Bowringer was an asset to the department, is if we reinstate him, does that then bring discredit unfairly to those other officers? And does it feed into that really unhealthy public dialogue we've had in this country lately about how officers have each other's backs and not the community? I don't believe that to be an accurate characterization of our department, but I feel that it'll breed public distrust, and then that's the light that our department is cast in. And I don't think that's fair, because I think we have a really strong, excellent department, and I just don't want the perception of the public to be that we tolerate dishonesty, and that if you're arrested by an officer, he's going to say whatever he has to do to make his story be believable. That's kind of scary, and you mentioned the fact that we give them guns and we give them a lot. There's just so much trust and that's all we have, everything's built on that trust. So yeah, it's a very, very unfortunate decision, all of this, because he seems to be an incredible person, but I feel like there were some really bad choices made.
Okay, with that, are we ready to make a decision? Does there need to be any more discussion?
Anything to add?
You're welcome to discuss more. You're welcome to make any comments you'd like to make.
Madam Mayor, are you ready for a motion?
I am ready if the rest of you are.
Well, I would move to confirm the city manager's decision upholding the termination of the employee Lorenzo Bowringer.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Stabline,
Yes.
Prowett.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 10, report of city officials.
John, do you have anything this morning?
No, I do not.
You might want to
All right.
pause while they're
Wait a minute.
Jay, we'll get to you in a moment. Okay.
He got caught up in the group think.
What's that?
He got caught up in the group think. Oh, yeah, what about that?
Okay.
All right, Jade, do you have anything this morning?
I would just like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, especially the city staff who takes such good care of us all year, including the officers. And encourage everybody to take advantage of the wonderful activities we're having downtown and the luminaries. So Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Bob, do you have anything this morning?
Well, it's hard to feel the Christmas spirit after all that, but
Yeah.
I would also say Merry Christmas and wish everybody a safe New Year.
Thank you. Nancy?
I will agree with the others. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And let's hope it starts off to a better note.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on to the city I don't have anything this morning, and we'll move on to the city manager. Do you have anything this
I
morning?
think we've given you enough today, so I'm done. Thank you.
Don't want to throw in an executive session
No,
another hour
yeah,
or
I
two.
think
You
probably
did
worth
mention
solving.
something about setting up
Oh.
a sports arena tour.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We are going to, I don't know when we'll do that. I think the council would benefit from it.
Yeah.
I think members of the committee, steering committee would benefit from a tour of the sports arena. You know, we've all been there 100 times and you sit in your seat, but maybe down in some of the locker rooms and just kind of get a feel for it. Maybe some of you have seen it, you don't need it, but we'll get something set up between
Okay.
now and, maybe not between now and first year, but shortly after that, so.
Okay.
But we will, thank you for mentioning that.
Would this be in conjunction with the visit by the, I don't know, the folks that made this document?
The
The
architect.
architects?
Well, we could, and that's what somebody had mentioned, do we need them there to help point some things out rather than me pointing, well, there's a
Well,
bathroom.
I don't
you
know
know.
that we need them there, but it'd be beneficial
Yeah.
to have them say, this is what this costs and why, this is what this costs and why, and really talk about that.
Very good.
Well, so whether there's somebody in the committee that's knowledgeable and able to do that, that's fine.
No, I agree, yeah.
But I'd like to I'd like to have somebody really explain to me what 12 million buys on the north part of the facility.
Right.
And why it's
I'll,
12, that's all.
Practice gyms.
Two
We'll
practice
coordinate
gyms,
that
12
with Wichita folks, and maybe we can get the Denver folks out as well for that. If not, the Wichita folks can help us with that.
I don't think we need
We'll-
a big trip from anybody.
But that makes sense to have them there, talk about the details, so
Right.
we'll get that set up.
And I do see, I have a document that needs everyone's signature, so I'm passing that.
I'd move to adjourn.
Thank you. Are you sure you have other places to be today?
Just the top.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Light,
Yes.
Pruitt.
Yes. Thank you all.
Pass that back.
Signature's down there.
Ooh.
Is it too early for beverage?